Chapter 851. It was actually a lightning pool. What was lightning? Although it was a type of energy, it was an intangible existence similar to light. However, the lightning in the lightning pool had liquefied into water. Lightning in the form of water. How powerful must one be to be able to compress lightning into such a state? Moreover, although the lightning pool was not big, it was about 100 feet wide and was about the height of a person. Looking at the lightning pool, Fan Tong hesitated. His face was filled with fear, and he did not even take half a step into the room. In this world, who was not afraid of lightning? Lightning represented the punishment of the heavens. However, cultivators went against the will of the heavens and were most afraid of lightning. Of course, other than those who had condensed a lightning-type godhead, the lightning was not that scary. However, even so, they could only come into contact with the lowest level of lightning. Many of them were killed by the lightning during the tribulation transcendence. Morong Yu's eyes lit up. To others, the lightning was the most terrifying and violent energy. Anyone who went near it would be killed. However, Morong Yu cultivated the lightning divinity. Moreover, in the cultivation world, he was not afraid of the tribulation transcendence. In his eyes, the lightning pool was a pool of energy that could increase his power. It could be seen from the way his lightning divinity trembled with excitement. If I can absorb all of the lightning pool, I can definitely break through to the true God stage, or even the heavenly God stage. Morong Yu's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to break through here. Otherwise, once he left this place, where would he find such rich lightning energy in the future? Moreover, he had the path understanding fruit now. He was not afraid of not breaking through to the chaotic celestial record. Fan Tong, this lightning is useful to me. I will refine it first. You can go and find the treasure yourself. Morong Yu turned and said to Fan Tong. Then, he jumped into the lightning pool. Fan Tong's eyes widened. Isn't this too crazy? He's actually not afraid of lightning. Fan Tong was extremely shocked. However, he did not leave to search for the treasure. Instead, he sat cross-legged at the door to protect Morong Yu. Just as Morong Yu jumped into the lightning pool, the liquid lightning submerged his body and then quickly seeped into his body through his pores, into his limbs, bones, and meridians. At the same time, the lightning divinity was trembling like a greedy baby, crazily absorbing the power of lightning. Lightning divinity had only reached the late stage of the true God realm and was still far from reaching the peak stage. But at this time, Morong Yu saw lightning divinity growing stronger at a speed visible to the naked eye. During this process, the liquefied lightning constantly tempered Morong Yu's body, pushing him towards becoming a medium-quality God artifact. I'll try to break through to the true God realm, or even the heavenly God realm in one go. Even if it's just the lightning divinity, Morong Yu thought in his heart, took out a path understanding fruit and swallowed it. The path understanding fruit melted in his mouth. It was faint and did not have any taste. But at this moment, Morong Yu's entire body was empty, and his comprehension was increasing rapidly. Pieces of tiny fragments appeared in his mind. These fragments were extremely small, but each of them contained a trace of the truth of the heavens and earth, a supreme mystery. Morong Yu knew that these were the so-called heavenly Tao. If he could really achieve the heavenly Tao, then he could become a heavenly God. Even if he was not a heavenly God, he was far from an ordinary cultivator. However, these fragments were too small. If he could comprehend them for a long time, Morong Yu would be able to comprehend something. But now, Morong Yu did not have the time to comprehend these heavenly Tao. Therefore, he decisively sealed all these fragments in his memory. When he had time in the future, he would take them out and slowly comprehend them. After sealing these heavenly Tao fragments, Morong Yu began to cultivate the chaotic celestial records. He wanted to make use of this opportunity to increase his comprehension, to increase his realm as much as possible. When I was in the immortal world, I had already cultivated the third level of the chaotic celestial records to perfection. If I can break through to the fourth level, as long as I have enough strength, I should be able to break through to the over-God realm. Yu thought in his heart and began to cultivate the chaotic celestial records with all his might. At the same time, the lightning in the lightning pool was constantly being absorbed by Yu's body. Soon, Yu's body and the lightning divinity reached their limits. And the lightning pool only decreased slightly, as if it did not decrease at all. He did not know how much time had passed, whether it was a day or 10 years. On this day, Yu finally felt an opportunity. This is the time, breakthrough for me. Yu suddenly roared. Kacha! The sound of bones cracking could be heard. At this moment, the chaotic celestial records finally broke through the 3rd level and reached the 4th level. The moment the chaotic celestial records broke through, Yu's realm also loosened up. Rumble, the 3 godheads started to crazily absorb energy, and they were about to break through. However, Yu automatically suppressed the breakthrough of the Space Godhead and Chaos Godhead. This was because he did not have the time to break through these 2 godheads. After all, if he wanted to break through these 2 godheads, he still needed to accumulate enough energy. If he wanted to break through, Yu could absorb energy from the surroundings. However, the Path Understanding Fruit's effect was still present. Yu did not want to waste this rare opportunity. He wanted to cultivate the chaotic celestial records to the peak of the 4th level, and even break through to the 5th level. Hence, Yu left the lightning divinity to absorb the energy in the lightning pool, and he continued to cultivate the chaos godhead. Boom! A powerful aura suddenly exploded from Yu's body, and it swept through the room he was in. Fortunately, this was the Bloody Hand's residence, and every room had powerful restrictions. Otherwise, this room would have been destroyed by the powerful aura from Yu's body. Broke through. Fantong looked at Yu in shock. In less than half a day, Yu had broken through from the late stage of the True God realm to the early stage of the True God realm. This speed was extremely fast. Originally, Fantong thought that Yu only wanted to absorb the lightning energy in the lightning pool. He did not expect that Yu was actually going to break through. After all, in the divine world, it was extremely difficult to break through a small cultivation level. Some people were unable to break through a small cultivation level their entire lives, and this was not uncommon. Moreover, even if one felt that they were about to break through, it was not something that could be done in seclusion. Some people felt that they were about to break through, but they needed hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years to break through. Of course, this was everyone's talent. The more talented a person was, the less time they needed to break through. Of course, they also needed to have enough power to support them. Otherwise, it would be just empty talk. Maybe it's because of the Path Understanding Fruit. Fantong was happy for Yu's breakthrough. However, he did not feel that it was because of Yu's talent. After all, he had just refined a Path Understanding Fruit. However, in less than half a day, Fantong was depressed. This was because Yu had broken through again. Middle stage of the True God realm. In less than a day, he had broken through from the late stage of the True God realm to the middle stage of the True God realm. 2 small cultivation levels and 1 large cultivation level. This was not because of the Path Understanding Fruit. After all, although the Path Understanding Fruit could allow one to understand the heaven way, it was not very useful. However, the effect of a single Path Understanding Fruit was very small, and it would take a very long time to comprehend it. After breaking through to the middle stage of the True God realm, the liquid lightning in the lightning pool was about to reach the bottom. This meant that the lightning pool, which had been accumulating lightning for many years, was about to be sucked dry by Yu. As time passed, the lightning in the lightning pool gradually decreased. Soon, it will be sucked dry by Yu. Sigh, it seems like he won't be able to break through to the late stage of the True God realm. Fantong sighed. Hence, Yu's cultivation level was close to the peak of the middle stage of the True God realm. However, the lightning pool had already been sucked dry. If he has enough power, he should be able to break through to the late stage of the True God realm. Fantong suppressed the shock in his heart and said regretfully. At this moment, Murong had already opened his eyes. A demonic lightning flashed across his eyes. He stepped out and left the lightning pool, arriving beside Fantong. Middle stage of the true god realm. Not bad. You're about to catch up with me. Fantong chuckled. Murong shook his head and looked unhappy. It's a pity that the lightning pool has been sucked dry. Otherwise, I would be able to raise my cultivation level by a few more realms. Fantong rolled his eyes. You've raised your cultivation level by a whole realm. Don't tell me you want to break through to the heaven god realm in one go. Murong shook his head. If there's enough lightning energy, I can even break through to the overgod realm. Break through 3 realms consecutively? From true god to true god, heaven god to overgod realm? Brother, are you dreaming? Fantong stared at Murong. He couldn't believe it. However, he didn't know that Murong was telling the truth. This was because with the help of the Path Understanding fruit, Murong had already cultivated the 4th level of the chaotic celestial record to the peak. The 4th level of the chaotic celestial record corresponded to true god, heaven god, and overgod realm. One had to know that Murong's cultivation method was different from other cultivation methods. As long as he broke through the chaotic celestial record, he wouldn't have any bottlenecks. As long as he had enough energy, he could break through to the overgod realm. However, even if he said it, no one would believe him, because it was too exaggerated. Murong shook his head and didn't explain further. He just looked outside. However, he furrowed his brows, because there were people everywhere outside. However, what puzzled Murong was why these people didn't enter his room. Therefore, he looked at Fantong. Fantong chuckled and said, "They're like me. They're afraid of the lightning pool and don't dare to enter. However, since you're out, let's go take a look at the last treasure." Chapter 852. The Final Treasure. Murong was rather confused as he looked at the sky. He had already broken through, but according to the usual practice of breaking through, he would be struck by a wave of tribulation lightning after breaking through. However, he couldn't sense any tribulation lightning here. In other words, the Bloody Hands residence was actually isolated from the outside world, and even the connection between heaven and earth could be cut off. Just how powerful did one have to be to accomplish this? However, it was just a tribulation. Murong had never been afraid of it. On the contrary, he was most interested in the final treasure that Fantong had mentioned. That's probably where the Bloody Hands' final treasure is. However, no one has been able to enter. As they spoke, the two of them had already taken many detours and arrived in front of a large hall. There was a huge plaza in front of the hall. At this moment, the plaza was already filled with people. There was no lack of overgod experts among them. As for whether there were even more powerful sky realm experts, Murong hadn't discovered any for now. Perhaps he was still unable to discover sky realm experts with his current strength. Or perhaps there weren't any sky realm experts here at all. What a vast amount of lightning energy. Murong had only just approached the front of the hall when he sensed waves of terrifying lightning energy surging towards him. It must be known that the entire hall was sealed and the door was tightly shut. No one could enter. The entire hall was surrounded by a huge restriction. According to Fantong, it wasn't that no one had tried to break through the door of the hall, including powerful overgods. However, no one had succeeded. There had even been overgods who had been killed by the backlash. They were killed by the shock waves. Murong asked with a slight frown as he sensed the vast amount of lightning energy coming from the hall. They were electrocuted. Fantong revealed a trace of fear and a strange smile. He had personally witnessed an overgod attempt to break through the door of the hall, but he had been blasted to smithereens by the lightning that erupted from the palace's restriction. The overgods were unable to resist at all, and they were instantly blasted to smithereens. That was simply soul-stirring. Was there anything in the world more tragic and spectacular than watching large groups of overgods perish right in front of him? However, ever since that time, Fantong had not seen anyone fall. However, he knew that the stronger the attack, the stronger the rebound force would be. Lightning, lightning again. Do you know what kind of divinity the Bloody Hand has? Morong turned to look at Fantong. He vaguely knew what attribute the bloody hand had, but he still wanted to confirm it. Lightning divinity. Back then, the bloody hand relied on his violent lightning powers to dominate the world. In the end, however, he still fell, Fantong said without hesitation. Morong looked at Fantong. How do you know so much about the bloody hand? I saw in a book, Fantong sniggered. Morong rolled his eyes. The bloody hand was an expert from the ancient times. How could there be a book that recorded it so clearly? Fantong clearly had a powerful background. However, Morong did not want to ask too much about it. Rumble, someone was attacking the hall. Hiss, the restriction on the surface of the hall was immediately activated as soon as it was attacked. Streaks of lightning constantly flowed across the surface of the hall. Morong saw streaks of lightning rapidly condense on the other side of the hall that was under attack. Then, they exploded violently, forming a dazzling ball of light that swept towards the attacker. Breakthrough. The attacker was a middle-aged man. He had actually reached the level of an overgod. When he saw the power of the lightning charge towards him, he suddenly unleashed a punch. He punched out viciously, striking the ball of lightning viciously. With a loud bang, the ball of lightning was shattered. However, the overgod staggered a few steps back as well. The tremendous force was transmitted to the ground through his feet, causing the ground to crack and leave behind huge footprints. If he dared to attack with his full strength, the lightning would have turned him to dust long ago, Fantong said disdainfully. Although the overgod had attacked the hall, it was not very powerful. However, even so, the terrifying power of lightning had almost killed him. If it's just a restriction, I can ignore it. However, how do I open the hall? Morong frowned slightly. He did not fear any restriction, no matter how powerful it was. However, the doors to the hall could not be opened just because he wanted to. He might need a key or something like that. Perhaps you only need to push the door gently to open it. Of course, that's only if you can pass through this restriction, Fantong sniggered as he urged Morong to open the door. He glanced around and saw that many people were staring at the palace. There was no lack of overgods among them. Morong lightning divinity had already broken through to mid-true god, so he did not fear gods. However, the difference between him and an overgod was just far too great. He could not withstand a single strike from an overgod. If he could really enter the palace, then he wouldn't be able to come out. As long as Morong went in and took a look around, he would definitely be surrounded and attacked by these people once he came out, even if he did not obtain anything. Rumble. Just as Morong was contemplating whether or not he should take the risk, the doors to the palace slowly opened. At the same time, Morong also felt that the incomparably surging lightning energy from before had disappeared into thin air. Morong frowned. Then, he threw a punch at the hall without any hesitation at all. Fantong cried out strangely. His face paled in fright, and he retreated with a flash. He was already traumatized by the lightning. He was afraid that Morong would be struck back by the restriction. However, Morong's power was not obstructed at all. It directly struck the wall of the hall, producing a great sound. It did not activate the lightning restriction. This was because the door had suddenly opened by itself. It had attracted everyone's attention. However, when they saw Morong's punch fail to activate the lightning restriction, everyone was immediately shocked. Boom, boom, boom. Streaks of power bombarded the palace, bursting out balls of divine light of various colors. However, the lightning restriction did not activate. The restriction has disappeared. Someone shouted excitedly. Then, as if he had just come to his senses, he shot straight into the hall. However, some people were even faster. They had already rushed into the hall before him. Therefore, apart from Morong and Fantong, everyone rushed into the hall as fast as they could. Bang, bang, bang. In fact, before they had even rushed into the hall, these people had already begun to attack. All of a sudden, power swept across the hall. Many gods began to die. In particular, the super experts at the Overgod realm merely unleashed the terrifying might of the Overgod realm. Some gods, and even the experts at the true God realm were shaken to the point of spitting out blood. They were really shaken to death. Fan Tong walked to Murong Yu's side. He looked a little embarrassed. This guy had escaped too quickly just now. Should we go in? Fan Tong pointed at the hall as his eyes lit up. I keep feeling that something's wrong. Why did the restriction disappear all of a sudden? Why did the door open all of a sudden? Murong Yu felt a little uneasy. Perhaps its power has been exhausted. There's nothing strange about that, Fan Tong said nonchalantly as he stared at the hall. Murong Yu nodded. Since they were already here, of course, they had to go in. As the saying goes, wealth comes from danger. Perhaps there really was the Bloody Hand's most precious collection inside. Otherwise, why would there be a seal here when there were no other restrictions in other places? Suppressing the uneasiness in his heart, Murong Yu and Fan Tong walked towards the door of the hall. The hall was huge. It could easily accommodate tens of thousands of people. When Murong Yu and Fan Tong approached the hall, they realized that there were no more fights in the hall. Although they were all glaring at each other angrily, they were divided into groups. They were all staring at the only blood-red crystal coffin in the hall. It was the only thing in the hall. The blood-red crystal coffin lay quietly in the center of the hall. Occasionally, a flash of lightning would flash across its surface. When Murong Yu touched the blood-red crystal coffin, the uneasiness in his heart grew even stronger. The Bloody Hand isn't buried in this blood-red crystal coffin, right? Fan Tong's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but shout, "Whoosh!" Before Fan Tong's voice fell, the people in the hall suddenly retreated. Although they didn't know about the Bloody Hand before, after entering the Bloody Hand's mansion, they already knew about this fierce person's life story. He was a heavenly emperor, or even an existence of a higher level. An existence of this level could kill them with just a glance. If the Bloody Hand was really buried here, everyone couldn't help but shudder at the thought. As the saying goes, a person's reputation is like a tree's shadow. Even if the Bloody Hand was an ancient mission, it was still terrifying. After all, his realm was there for all to see. If the Bloody Hand is really buried in this blood-red crystal coffin, then there must be treasures buried with him. Some people looked at the blood-red crystal coffin with burning eyes. Rumble. However, before anyone could make a move, the blood-red crystal coffin already made a series of noises. They could even see the lid of the blood-red crystal coffin slowly moving, as if something was about to crawl out from inside. Everyone jumped in fright and hurriedly retreated. A corpse coming to life? Or is the Bloody Hand not dead at all? Everyone, including Murong Yu, had the same thought in their minds at the same time. Rumble. The lid of the coffin kept moving. Finally, a few withered fingers slowly reached out from the blood-red crystal coffin and appeared in front of everyone. At the same time, an extremely terrifying pressure exploded from the blood-red crystal coffin. It swept through heaven and earth, suppressing the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Chapter 853. Plop, plop. Under the terrifying pressure, everyone in the hall could not help but prostrate themselves on the ground. An instant later, only the overgods, Murong Yu and Fan Tong, remained on their knees. However, even with that being the case, the overgods still struggled to hold on. Their bodies trembled constantly, and they could be forced to prostrate themselves on the ground at any time. Murong Yu was the same. However, it was only a corpse that had been dead for who knew how long. How could it force Murong Yu to prostrate himself on the ground? So what if he was the Bloody Hand? Bang! With an explosion, the lid of the crimson crystal coffin was sent flying. In the next moment, a shriveled person that was only skin and bones stood up. Kiki, how many years has it been? I've finally awakened. As the shriveled person stood up from the crimson crystal coffin, an even more terrifying pressure erupted from him. Plop! The overgods could not hold back any longer in the end, and they were directly forced to their knees. Before the shriveled person, they could not even withstand a single blow. Murong Yu's face was pale, and his body trembled. The power of his 3 godheads erupted. He gritted his teeth and endured the pressure forcefully, but he could not kneel. As for Fan Tong, who stood not too far behind Morong Yu, his body shone with a faint light at this moment, blocking the terrifying pressure. Fan Tong took a step forward, and the light enveloped Morong Yu. Immediately, Morong Yu felt the terrifying pressure vanish. It was directly blocked by the light barrier. Morong Yu glanced at Fan Tong in surprise. He had never thought that Fan Tong would actually possess such a treasure. However, he had always felt that Fan Tong's background was not simple, so it was normal for him to possess such a treasure. The bloody hand. At this moment, everyone finally reacted. The person who called himself this demon emperor was definitely the owner of this mansion, the bloody hand. However, wasn't that guy already dead? Why did he suddenly come back to life? Sensing the powerful aura coming from the bloody hand, as well as the weak aura of life, everyone was shocked and horrified. Who is this guy? Actually, no one was very clear about this. However, from his name, one could tell who he was. The bloody hand. How could someone who was both bloody and demonic be a good person? A bunch of ant-like existences. The strongest among them is only an overgod? The bloody hand stepped out of the crimson crystal coffin, coldly glanced at everyone, and then said disdainfully. His voice actually contained a trace of disappointment. Could it be that this fellow was hoping that those who came were all experts? What the hell? However, soon, Morong Yu and the others knew what the bloody hand was going to do. Although you're all ants, your essence, blood, and flesh should be able to replenish some of my lifespan and restore my true body. I'll first suck you dry, then go out and kill a bunch of people to restore myself to my peak. Ha ha! The bloody hand laughed loudly. However, when everyone heard what he said, they were extremely shocked. He's actually going to make everyone bleed, just like GMO back then. Morong Yu's expression suddenly changed, and he shouted, "Retreat." Fan Tong also knew what the bloody hand was going to do. His expression changed as he turned around and flew out with Morong Yu. The others also had the same thought as Morong Yu and Fan Tong. However, at this moment, the bloody hand's body shook violently. Bang! With just a single sound, everyone in the Great Hall was turned into a bloody mist at the same time. Then the bloody hand took a deep breath, and the bloody mist was sucked into his mouth. Then, the bloody hand's withered body, which was only skin and bones, regained some flesh. However, although tens of thousands of people had been killed and devoured by him, their strength was still not enough. After all, their strength was not high, and the power contained in their flesh and blood was not much. It was completely useless against a super expert like the bloody hand. It was not even enough for him to regrow his flesh and blood. However, as long as the bloody hand left here and killed more people, he would be able to restore his peak strength. It was just like how GMO had slaughtered immortals in the immortal world. However, compared to the bloody hand, GMO was nothing. Quick! Quick! Seeing this scene, Morong Yu and Fan Tong were scared half to death and quickly fled outside. This lord was a notorious super expert. If the two of them did not escape and stayed here, they would end up like the others, eaten by the bloody hand. However, before they could escape far, they crashed into an invisible restriction with a bang. The bloody hand had already set up a restriction at some point. However, restrictions were non-existent to Morong Yu. He pulled Fan Tong, and in a flash, they passed through the restrictions set up by the bloody hand and rushed out. Little guy, you're quite interesting. The bloody hand let out a cry of surprise. However, a terrifying murderous intent immediately erupted from his body. Hundun, you stole my path understanding fruit. The bloody hand immediately looked at Morong Yu and Fan Tong. Because the two of them were too weak, the bloody hand did not even bother to look at them. However, with one look, he was instantly enraged. This was because he felt the aura of the path understanding fruit from Morong Yu and Fan Tong, especially Morong Yu, who had refined a path understanding fruit. At this moment, the aura of the path understanding fruit on his body was even stronger. What was the path understanding fruit? It was planted by the bloody hand himself countless years ago. It was for the sake of using the path understanding fruit to understand the heavenly way after he was resurrected and to take the final step to reach the next level. However, the path understanding fruit was now ruined by an ant. How could not be angry? You're all going to die. I'm going to refine all of you. The bloody hand roared. In a flash, he appeared in front of Murong Yu and Fan Tong. Then he opened his hand, and the bone-like hand transformed into millions of palm shadows, enveloping Murong Yu and Fan Tong. He wanted to smash Murong Yu into a bloody mist, and then refine and absorb him. Murong Yu was furious. So what if he was the bloody hand? He was not someone who could be trampled on. Immediately, he raised the power of the three godheads to the limit. Even if he could not win, he had to fight. He was not the kind of person who would close his eyes and wait for death. However, just as he was about to attack, he was stopped by Fan Tong. The bloody hand, if you dare to hurt us, even if you're resurrected, I can guarantee that you won't live past today. Fan Tong's lazy expression disappeared, and in its place was coldness and murderous intent. Ant, are you threatening me? The Bloodhand Devil Emperor actually gave up. Perhaps he was surprised that an ant dared to threaten him, or perhaps he thought that these two were just ants in his eyes. Anyway, he would refine them sooner or later. It was just a matter of time. You can try. I can guarantee that you won't live past today, Fan Tong said with a cold smile. Is that so? The bloody hand laughed loudly. His withered face looked extremely ferocious. Ant, go to hell. Who was the bloody hand? Why would he care about an ant's threat? Therefore, he attacked decisively. After all, he had just been resurrected and needed to absorb a large amount of blood essence to recover his peak power. Otherwise, once news of his resurrection spread, he would become the enemy of the entire world. He would be hunted down all over the world. He did not have the heaven-defying methods he had in the past to avoid being hunted down. Therefore, after killing and refining Murong Yu and Fan Tong, he had to leave this place. The sooner, the better. You're courting death. Fan Tong roared angrily as a sinister look flashed across his eyes. However, at this moment, Murong Yu was a little worried. He did not know if Fan Tong had the heaven-defying method to kill the bloody hand. However, at this moment, he chose to believe. Fan Tong turned his head and gave Murong Yu a calm smile. His figure flashed and suddenly appeared in front of Murong Yu. At this moment, the bloody hand's large hand finally slammed down. A terrifying pressure immediately pressed down. It looked as if it was going to kill Murong Yu and Fan Tong. Boom! At this moment, a blinding golden light suddenly exploded from Fan Tong's body. Then, a tall, middle-aged man's figure, whose entire body was flickering with golden light, appeared in front of them. An aura that was millions of times more terrifying than the bloody hand's aura exploded from this figure, intimidating all the realms. Fortunately, although this aura was powerful, it did not affect Murong Yu and Fan Tong. Otherwise, the two of them would have been instantly turned into nothingness, not even leaving behind a bloody mist. Who dares to kill my son? The middle-aged man roared angrily as soon as he appeared. Then, he fiercely threw a punch at the bloody hand. The bloody hand turned pale with fright and immediately retreated. Boom! A terrifying aura instantly exploded. The bloody hand's residence was directly crushed into powder by this terrifying aura. Meanwhile, the bloody hand, who had previously been majestic and awe-inspiring, immediately soared into the sky in a panic and fled without a fight. Dying. Seeing that the bloody hand had fled, the golden figure was not in a hurry. He only shouted coldly and slammed his palm forward. Bang! The bloody hand was extremely fast, but the golden figure was even more terrifying. With a flip of his hand, he directly slapped the bloody hand's body. Then there was no more then. Not even a trace of the bloody hand was left behind. He had already disappeared without a trace. It was a pity that the extremely vicious and evil the bloody hand, who had been resurrected for less than half a day, had died just like that. This time, he was truly and thoroughly dead. There was no possibility of resurrection. After slapping the bloody hand to death, the golden figure also instantly disappeared. Murong Yu's face was filled with shock. The bloody hand was so powerful, but he was actually killed by this tall, middle-aged man with a single slap. The most important thing was that this middle-aged man was only a phantom. This was Fantong's father? Murong Yu looked at Fantong. However, at this moment, Fantong was paralyzed on the ground without a care for his image. You scared this handsome brother to death. Chapter 854. The Bloody Hand, that bastard, wasted one of my life-saving trump cards. Fantong stood up and cursed angrily. Murong Yu shook his head. This guy's father was very powerful, at least at the level of a heavenly emperor. How could he not have many life-saving trump cards? This was just a waste of one. Seeing Murong Yu's disdainful look, Fantong smiled helplessly and said, "Brother, you don't know how painful my life is. My father is very stingy. He only gave me 3 life-saving trump cards. He said that a true expert needs to go through bloody battles to grow. Not long ago, he kicked me out and sent me to the God realm to gain experience." Murong Yu looked at Fantong with disdain. It would be strange if he believed him. This guy's father was so powerful. He definitely wouldn't let him die. However, his father actually allowed him to come out and gain experience by himself without the protection of an expert by his side. Just how bold was that? However, Murong Yu also agreed with Fantong's father's actions. The Bloody Hand's mansion has been destroyed. There shouldn't be anything left. Let's leave. Murong Yu looked around. This place had been razed to the ground. There was nothing left. However, they had also gained a lot from this trip. Murong Yu even obtained 8 Path Understanding fruits. One must know that even the most powerful people in the God world would be jealous of the Path Understanding fruits. One could imagine how precious the Path Understanding fruits were. If Murong Yu sold 1 Path Understanding fruit, he would definitely become one of the richest people in the God world in an instant. However, if news of the Path Understanding fruit was leaked, what awaited him would be endless pursuit. Other than that, Murong Yu also obtained 2 supreme gray god weapons. He even raised the lightning divinity from the late true god realm to the mid-true god realm. The gains were huge. Moreover, because of the breakthrough in the chaotic heavenly records, Murong Yu could quickly raise his realm to the king god realm as long as he had enough power. In the following time, Murong Yu's main goal was to find a large amount of power to raise his strength. Where are we going next? Are you going back to the Tiandao sect? Fantong asked. Murong Yu pondered for a moment and then shook his head. It was useless for him to go back to the Tiandao sect now. Could it be that he was cultivating in the sect? If that was the case, how long would it take to raise his realm? Moreover, Murong Yu had killed several inner disciples of the Heavens Alliance before he came out. Although it was done secretly, it was highly likely that he would be found out. Even if they did not find out, the people from the Sky Alliance would not let him go. His current strength was still too low. Great, let's go take a look. Fantong immediately became excited. He didn't know what this guy was so excited about. After all, Murong Yu wasn't a woman. Could it be that this guy killed both men and women? Murong Yu looked at Fantong with vigilance. What are you thinking about? The Tiandao sect is one of the biggest cities in the Dream Wilderness. It's very lively. Moreover, there's the biggest stone gambling place in the Dream Wilderness. I wanted to see it for a long time, but I've been grounded by my father. Now, I finally have a chance. Murong Yu was surprised. Stone gambling? What kind of stone? Fantong knew that Murong Yu had ascended from the immortal realm and didn't know much about the God realm. So he explained, stone gambling. It's God's stone gambling. God's stone is different from God's crystal. God's crystal is produced by God's crystal mine and can be dug out by mining. Moreover, God's crystal only contains God origin energy. But God's stone is different. God's stone contains very little God origin energy. However, there are some extremely precious things in it. For example, God's law. For example, God's blood. After looking at Murong Yu, Fantong continued to explain, God's law is the law that you've comprehended. You have a lightning godhead, so if you can comprehend a lightning God's law, it'll be of great help to your breakthrough. It'll allow you to continuously advance in realms. God's blood isn't just any ordinary blood. It's the blood essence of a god. Think about it. How much blood essence does a god have? A god's blood essence contains a god's understanding of power and God's law. If you can refine and absorb God's blood, then you'll have an additional god's understanding of realms, power, and God's law. It'll be extremely beneficial to your cultivation. Murong Yu's eyes sparkled. These are all good things. However, he still didn't know how to stone gambling. Therefore, Fan Tong continued to explain, there's a layer of stone outside the God Stone that blocks divine telekinesis. This stone is quite strange and doesn't have much defensive power. Even a normal person can crush it. However, it blocks divine telekinesis. Even heaven and earth's divine telekinesis can't penetrate it. Therefore, after obtaining a piece of God's stone, if you don't peel off the stone, you won't know what's inside. That's why there's a market for stone gambling. If that's the case, then let's go take a look. Murong Yu's interest was piqued. However, he didn't have the money to buy those God stones now. At most, he can only go take a look. However, with Fan Tong's extraordinary status, he must have a lot of things on him. Hee, you two brats, there's no need for you to go anywhere. This is where you'll be buried. Suddenly, a sinister voice rang out, scaring Murong Yu and Yu Yuehan. It's you, old bastard. Murong Yu and Fan Tong's expressions darkened when they saw who it was. Murderous intent filled the air. Hand over the path understanding fruit, and I'll give you a quick death. Otherwise, I'll torture you to death. The old man laughed maliciously. It was the overgod old man who fought with Murong Yu and Fan Tong for the path understanding fruit. In the beginning, this guy was severely injured by the path understanding fruit seal. He fled in a panic, but soon returned. However, he saw that the path understanding fruit had already been taken. His suspicions immediately shifted to Murong Yu and Li Wuyo. I can't believe we let that old bastard escape. Murong Yu and Fan Tong looked at each other and shook their heads. Old bastard, get out of my way now, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, you're dead meat. Fan Tong said unhappily. Back in the garden, this guy actually attacked him, and that made him want to kill him. If it weren't for the fact that he had fewer trump cards every time he used them, he would have used them long ago to kill this old bastard. However, apart from those trump cards, Fan Tong really had no way of killing this old man. After all, there is a difference of 2 realms between them. Ha ha! Kid, are you stupid? The old man laughed loudly, thinking that Fan Tong was just bluffing. However, if he knew that Fan Tong had just killed or revived the bloody hand, what kind of expression would he have? Old bastard, if you take another step forward, I'll kill you immediately. Seeing the old man closing in with murderous intent, Fan Tong was furious. He was about to use his trump card to kill the old man. However, Murong Yu patted Fan Tong on the shoulder and said, "It's not worth it for you to waste a trump card on someone like him. I'll kill him. Can you do it?" Fan Tong looked at Murong Yu and asked in disbelief. After all, although Murong Yu had reached the intermediate stage of true God, his opponent was an overgod. Whether I can or not depends on the result, Murong Yu said with a confident smile on his face. Then, he took large strides forward and walked towards the old man. Murong Yu was not arrogant, nor was he here to die. He was now confident that he could fight the old man. Before lightning divinity had broken through, he could already kill a heavenly god with the power of 3 godhoods. Now, although the power of 3 godhoods was still not enough to kill an overgod, the old man was already an overgod. However, the old man was no longer an overgod. He had been severely injured by the seal, and probably could not even use 50% of his power. As long as the old man was not an overgod, Murong Yu would be able to fight him. Kid, this isn't the garden. The old man laughed menacingly and slammed his palm down at Murong Yu. It was earth-shattering, overwhelming, and shocking. Murong Yu snorted coldly, and the power of 3 godhoods exploded. He met the attack with a punch. Boom! A terrifying shockwave was formed in an instant, causing ripples to appear in the void. Murong Yu, on the other hand, was sent flying several miles away. However, the old man was forced to take a few steps back as well. Huh? The old man's face revealed a look of surprise. A sharp, murderous intent flashed across his eyes as he looked at Murongyu. Overgods are nothing more than this. Murongyu, who was far away, snorted coldly. Then he took a step forward in the air and punched out once again. Boom, boom, boom. The two of them began to fight crazily. However, although the old man was severely injured, he was still extremely powerful after all. Each time, he would send Murongyu flying. However, he could only send Murongyu flying. He could not kill Murongyu. In fact, he could not even injure Murongyu. Murongyu's physical body had already surpassed that of an ordinary divine body. It had reached the level of a low-quality, godly weapon. How could he be injured so easily? However, the old man's powerful strength caused Murongyu's blood to boil. On the other hand, Murongyu's power of thunder caused the old man to suffer. Even though he was an overgod, he did not dare to be struck by lightning. However, Murongyu mainly used the power of thunder to attack. Too powerful, fighting an overgod as a true god. This brother of mine is no ordinary person. Fantong's eyes lit up as he watched from the side. He was excited, and he could not wait to charge forward and fight. However, the old man's murderous intent surged. The stronger Murongyu was, the sharper his murderous intent became. Since this person was already an enemy, he could only kill him. Die! The old man roared furiously and charged forward again. Ha ha! You're the one who's going to die. Murongyu laughed out loud as a pair of illusory light wings appeared on his back. Then, with a fierce flap, Murongyu's speed increased by several times. He charged directly in front of the old man. Then, he punched out quickly, breaking through the sky and landing on the old man's chest. Chapter 855. Although the old man was an overgod, his physical body had yet to reach the level of a low-grade god weapon. In fact, in the realm of gods, even powerful experts had relatively weak physical bodies. After all, they usually focused on the cultivation of power and not the cultivation of their physical body. In the process of cultivating power, power would also temper the physical body. However, it was very difficult for the physical body of an overgod or even a sky realm expert to reach the level of a low-grade god weapon. With a bang, the old man moved sideways at the critical moment. However, half of his body was still blown up by Murongyu's punch. This would not severely injure the old man. After all, although the old man was severely injured previously, he was relatively powerful. As long as he expended a certain amount of divine power, he would be able to recover his physical body. However, the key was Murongyu's power. That was the power of lightning. It was one of the most destructive powers in the world. In the blink of an eye, endless lightning engulfed the old man. The powerful and violent power was even more frenzied, destroying the old man's physical body. In an instant, the old man's body was paralyzed, and his movements became sluggish. It was this sluggishness that doomed him to death. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, Murongyu consecutively threw over 1,000,000 punches. The terrifying power bombarded the old man's body continuously. After an earth-shattering explosion, the old man's physical body was blown up. Although the old man's physical body was blown up, his godhead was not blown up, and his soul was not severely injured. This way he wouldn't die. However, he was completely engulfed by lightning. The moment his soul was exposed, it was already blown to smithereens by the endless lightning. Overgod dead. He was killed by a true god. Huff! Murongyu sat down on the ground, both physically and mentally exhausted. Although he had killed the old man was not an overgod at his peak. At most, he was only a heavenly god. Even so, he had used up a lot of energy, especially the lightning divinity, whose energy was almost completely depleted. There was no choice. The Chaos Godhead had the Tree of Life to replenish the Chaos energy. The Spatial Godhead could also absorb spatial energy at any time. On the other hand, the Lightning Divinity didn't have that much lightning energy to absorb. He could only absorb the God Essence energy and drifting lightning energy to recover his strength. Compared to the primal chaos god Lattice and spatial god Lattice, the lightning divinity's recovery speed was incomparably slow. It even felt like he couldn't make ends meet. Fortunately, Muronyu still had some god crystals and godheads on him. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Muronyu took out a godhead of the true god realm and began to absorb its energy. In less than half a day, the lightning divinity's energy had been fully restored. However, the godhead was also reduced to dust. Godhoods were extremely hard. Even the experts of the god realm would find it difficult to shatter them. However, as long as the power inside was completely absorbed, the godhead would automatically shatter. Brother, you're so strong. Even a lord god was killed by you. Fantong walked over and praised Muronyu generously. Muronyu shook his head. The other party was at most a heavenly god. If it was a lord god at his peak, even if he had just ascended, he would probably be able to kill me with a single slap. After this battle, Murongyu's strength had also improved. At the same time, he also realized how powerful an Lord God realm was. Just as he said, an Lord God realm expert, even if he had just ascended, could kill him with a single slap. Of course, the other party had to land a slap on Murongyu's body first. No matter what, this old man is still a Lord God. If news of this battle were to spread, your name would probably shake the entire dream wilderness. Fantong said with a smile. Don't. I don't want to be obliterated by others. Muronyu shook his head. In this world where strength reigned supreme, sometimes having monstrous talent was not necessarily a good thing. After all, not many people would be able to see such a monstrous talent grow so quickly and threaten their position. In that case, the only way was to obliterate the other party before he had grown. Making a fortune quietly is the way to go. Fantong snickered. Immediately, the two of them walked toward Xuanqing City. Muronyu was quite interested in the so-called stone gambling. If he accidentally gambled on something that contained a god rule or something like that, it would be a huge win. God rules were actually laws. For example, lightning laws, space laws, and so on. In the god realm, everyone's godhead had a corresponding attribute. Each attribute was a god rule, a so-called law. In the god realm, sometimes laws were more important than power. For example, if two people were both lightning divinity and were of the same realm. However, one of them had a deeper understanding of lightning laws, while the other had no understanding of lightning laws. Between the two of them, who was stronger and who was weaker? Obviously, the former was stronger. Sometimes, the former could even kill the latter in an instant. Murongyu's current understanding of god rules was not enough, especially the lightning divinity and the space godhead. Although the lightning divinity's lethality was very strong, Muronyu felt that it could still increase the lethality of the lightning power. As for the space godhead, its lethality was also extremely terrifying. However, the space law's main point was not its lethality, but its use of space. If used well, one could escape into the void, or even teleport, or even perfectly integrate with the entire space of the god realm. When he was in the immortal realm, Muronyu could already tear the void, travel hundreds of millions of miles away. However, in the god realm, space was too stable and could not be torn. Moreover, if Muronyu could understand teleportation, he would be in an invincible position. Here, the lethality of the space law was not only terrifying, but also strange. Xuanqing City, one of the largest cities in the Dream Wilderness, was located in the center of the Xuanqing region. It was an extremely long journey from the Qingling region. With Muronyu and Fantong's current speed, it would take a few hundred years to fly all the way from the Qingling region to the Xuanqing City. One could only imagine how huge the continent of the God Realm was. In the Dream Wilderness, the distance between the Qingling region and the Xuanqing region was not too far. It was said that the 4 continents were even more vast. Fortunately, the God Realm was different from the Immortal Realm. In the God Realm, there were teleportation portals everywhere. As long as one could afford the cost of teleportation, one could continuously teleport over. However, The cost of teleportation was not something that ordinary people could afford. However, although Morong Yu was poor, Fan Tong was the standard tall, rich, and handsome man. Fan Tong paid for all the teleportation portals along the way. There was no choice who asked him to be tall, rich, and handsome. Naturally, Morong Yu did not mind. However, this made Morong Yu even more determined to become rich. After a few months of teleportation, they finally arrived at the Xuanqing city. It was indeed one of the biggest cities in the Dream Wilderness. The Xuanqing city was many times bigger than the primordial city in the primordial continent. Among them, experts could be found everywhere. Heavenly gods, master gods, and the like could be thrown into a pile with just a turn of the head. There were also many experts like heavenly lords and heavenly lords. Gigolo, my young miss has taken a liking to you. Follow me. Not long after Morong Yu and Fan Tong came out of the teleportation portal, a servant-like man stood in front of Morong Yu and Fan Tong. He looked down at Fan Tong and said arrogantly, "Huffed." Ha Morong Yu could not help but laugh out loud, while Fan Tong's face darkened. "You do look like a gigolo." Morong Yu looked at Fan Tong and could not help but laugh. Fan Tong was indeed handsome, and with that lazy smile, he did have the potential to be a gigolo. Scram! Fan Tong was enraged and shouted at the man. Anyone who was walking on the street and was treated as a gigolo would not be happy. "Kid, it's your fortune that my young miss has taken a liking to you. You should be grateful and shedding tears of gratitude. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Otherwise, I can only break your dog legs," the man said sinisterly, his eyes flashing with killing intent. "Fan Tong, why don't you consider it? It seems that the other party's status is not low." Morong Yu poked Fan Tong and said with a smile. Hearing Morong Yu's words, Fan Tong's face darkened even more. The man looked at Morong Yu with admiration. "Kid, you're not bad, although you're not the young miss type. However, you could be the young miss personal bodyguard. Although your strength is a little weak, you're barely qualified to be a servant." Morong Yu's face darkened instantly. "Who is this idiot? May I ask, who is your young miss?" Morong Yu asked with a dark face. The man's face immediately turned arrogant and said in a low voice, "My young miss is the young miss of the Black Star City's City Lord residence. Xianyu, the young miss of the Black Star City's City Lord residence, is actually looking for gigolos on the streets? This is too lewd." Morong Yu and Fan Tong looked at each other and saw the disdain in each other's eyes. "Kid, have you thought it through? If you have, then come with me. If you and a young miss favor, you could become the young miss gigolo and enjoy wealth. Scram as far as you can. Otherwise, I don't mind tearing down the City Lord residence and even the entire Black Star City." Fan Tong was enraged and murderous. Fan Tong did have the ability to do so. However, would the man believe him? "You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Do you want me to break your legs before you're willing?" The man sneered and was about to attack. "You'd better scram immediately and advise your young miss not to offend someone she shouldn't. Otherwise, there's no need for the Black Star City to exist anymore." Morong Yu said coldly. "Nonsense, you're courting death." The man snorted and reached out his hand. His palm covered Morong Yu and Fan Tong and attacked. "You're overestimating yourself." Morong Yu growled as he took a step forward and sent a punch flying out. Chapter 856. With a bang, the man was sent flying by Morong Yu's punch. However, Morong Yu only sent him flying with a single punch. He didn't intend to kill him. Otherwise, if his mistress went crazy, Morong Yu and Fan Tong would have to leave the Xianxing city. The poor man thought that he could crush Morong Yu and Fan Tong just because he was in the heavenly god realm. However, he could not even withstand a single blow. Not to mention Morong Yu. If this guy really dared to attack Fan Tong, Morong Yu would definitely die. "You dare to attack me, you're dead." The heavenly god stood up from the ground in a sorry state and shot a venomous glance at Morong Yu and Jian Wushuang before running away. Damn it, Fan Tong was still in a bad mood. A dignified, he was actually treated as a gigolo. Fantong was infuriated. He even had the thought of destroying the entire city. Of course, he was not a bloodthirsty person, although destroying the Xianxing city was just a matter of waving his hand. If he activated his father's shadow, not to mention a Xianxing city, even 100 of them would be razed to the ground in an instant. Gigolo. Morong looked at Fantong and laughed. Fantong said with a black face, "If you mention this again, I'll fall out with you." Morong shrugged. What kind of power does this Xianxing city belong to? The mistress of the city lord's residence is really Xianxing city, a power of its own. The city lord, Xianxing, is rumored to have reached the heavenly king realm. She's one of the top experts in the dream wilderness. Morong nodded. Xianxing city is actually a big power in the dream wilderness. Moreover, it's one of the biggest cities in the dream wilderness. Countless people do business here, whether it's Xianxing city or other sects. There are huge profits every day. Of course, Xianxing city has the biggest profits. Xianxing can be considered a decent person. However, his daughter, Fantong, shook his head as a look of disdain flashed across his eyes. He continued, his daughter, Xianyu. To put it simply, she is the lord of 1,000 horsemen and has 1,000,000 male companions. She's naturally lascivious, and it's not uncommon to see people snatching men like today. However, because his father, Xianxing, had a daughter 10,000 years ago, he doted on her and never interfered with Xianyu's affairs. This made Xianyu even more fearless. However, there were many despicable men in this world. Countless people left happily after being chosen by Xianyu. After all, the other party's father is a super expert of the heavenly king stage, controlling the mysterious star city that is worth billions of gold every day. Fantong's words were filled with disdain. With his status, he wouldn't even look at such a woman. So what if she was beautiful? Moreover, with his status, there were many more outstanding women throwing themselves at him. As for Xianyu, Morong actually didn't have any thoughts about her. So what if she was lustful by nature? It had nothing to do with him. As long as they didn't provoke him, he naturally couldn't be bothered. In the mysterious Star City, there were countless stone gambling dens of all sizes. However, 10 of them were the most famous. One of them was the mysterious Star City's property, the mysterious Star Gambling Den. When the two of them arrived at the mysterious Star Gambling House, they were greeted by a sea of people. One by one, they were either picking out divine stones or cutting them. Sighs of disappointment, regret, and exclamations of surprise were constantly heard. The exclamations were naturally because they had obtained something good from the stone gambling. However, as the saying went, 9 out of 10 bets were lost, and 9 out of 10 stones were lost. Those who gambled on stones would often find useless stones, and they might not even be able to obtain a single low-grade divine crystal. Let's go try our luck. Fantong became excited. He walked into the gambling den and began to look at the divine stones. Morong finally saw what a divine stone was. In fact, the so-called divine stones were just ordinary stones of different sizes. He didn't reveal his aura either. If his aura was exposed, would there still be a need for stone gambling? With one look, one could tell that there was something inside. Even if there was such a thing, the gambling den would have opened itself. In the mysterious Star Gambling Den, the stone gambling was also divided into 3 classes, and they were in different courtyards. At a glance, there were thousands of stones lying on the ground. Some people were loitering around, choosing the divine stones that they liked. Morong walked around the divine stones, and then there was no more. In his eyes, he couldn't see anything at all. The divine stones here all looked the same. This was completely gambling, and it was all about luck. Morong hand accidentally touched a piece of divine stone, and then a look of surprise appeared on his face. In his eyes, the divine stone that he couldn't see through previously became transparent at this moment. Morong looked over and saw everything in the divine stone. There was nothing. It was a piece of useless stone. Morong was shocked, and for a moment, he didn't know what was going on. Thus, he placed his hand on one of the divine stones. Unsurprisingly, he saw everything in this piece of divine stone. Compared to the previous piece of useless stone, this piece of divine stone was more valuable, and it seemed to be a fist-sized piece of low-grade divine crystal. However, the price of this divine stone wasn't just a piece of divine crystal, and if someone bought it, it would still be a loss. What's going on? Morong Yu was shocked. For a moment, he didn't understand. Could it be because of the spatial divine lattice? No, it shouldn't be because of the spatial divine lattice. Although there are very few people with spatial divine lattice, there are still some. If that's the case, wouldn't these people be able to see through the divine stone with one look? However, Fan Tong, even the most powerful experts in the God realm, wouldn't be able to see through the divine stone. Then, it can only be because of the primal God lattice. Yes, primal chaos gives birth to all things, and these stone layers are also derived from primal chaos, so they can't block the power of primal chaos. Because of this, I can see through the divine stone. Morong Yu quickly understood. However, he was still worried that this ability was just a flash in the pan, so he continued to experiment. He even specially went to touch those divine stones that had been bought and were waiting to be cut. After a round of experiments, Morong Yu confirmed that his ability was correct. He could really see through the surface of the divine stone and see everything inside. Now that Morong Yu had just ascended to the God realm, what did he lack the most? All kinds of treasures and money. In fact, Morong Yu lacked money. As long as he had money, what couldn't he buy? However, where could he earn money? In the Tian Dao sect, the outer court disciples only had 10 pieces of low-grade divine crystals a month. A year, they only had a little over 100. Even ordinary disciples didn't have enough for cultivation, not to mention buying things. However, if Morong Yu could cut out some divine medicine, divine blood, or even divine laws from the divine stone, Morong Yu would become rich overnight. However, as for how to do it, he had to plan it carefully. Otherwise, even if Morong Yu became rich overnight, he might not be able to leave the Xianxing city. After all, it was impossible for the gambling den to let a person cause them to suffer a huge loss. Even if they didn't do anything on the surface, who knew if they would secretly do something? Moreover, there were many greedy people in the world, and these people would definitely rob and kill Morong Yu. Pauper, if you don't have money, then get lost. Don't block me from choosing divine stones. While Morong Yu was deep in thought, a voice entered Morong Yu's ears. Morong Yu turned his head and saw a young man in the true God realm looking at him with a look of disdain. Morong Yu looked at the divine stones in the young man's hand and couldn't help but smile. The price of the divine stones wasn't low. One piece cost thousands of low-grade divine crystals. However, Morong Yu knew that they were all useless stones, and there was nothing in them. Because the divine stones were the ones that Morong Yu had touched before. He had seen them clearly. B. Astor starred. What are you laughing at? The young man's face darkened, and he looked at Morong Yu with murderous intent. Morong Yu was confused. How had he offended the young man? Was he a mad dog, biting people everywhere? Morong Yu had always disdained to be calculative with such people. However, he smirked and said slowly, "It's just a few thousand low-grade divine crystals. Anyone can afford it. I don't know where your sense of superiority comes from. If you have the ability, go to the first grade area and choose a few divine stones." First grade area? The young man couldn't help but tremble. He glared at Morong Yu fiercely and snorted coldly before running away. The third grade area was where Morong Yu was. It wasn't expensive. One could even buy a god's corpse with a few hundred low-grade divine crystals. However, the second grade area could only be calculated with mid-grade divine crystals. The first grade area was even more terrifying. It only accepted high-grade divine crystals. In the realm of the gods, there was never a lack of rich people. However, no matter what world it was, the poor were always the most abundant. Not to mention high-grade divine crystals. Many people didn't even have many low-grade divine crystals. As a core disciple of the Heaven Dao sect, one of the giants of the Dream Wilderness land, he could only receive 100 high-grade divine crystals a month. However, Fantong was in the first grade area. Tall, rich, and handsome was indeed tall, rich, and handsome. He had so many divine crystals that he couldn't use them. However, as Fantong's friend, Moronyu didn't want Fantong's money to be wasted. Moreover, he wanted to go to the first grade area to see if there were any divine stones that were worth selling. The first grade area lived up to its name. There were many valuable divine stones here. However, this was only relative to the third grade area. If he bought these divine stones, even if there was something valuable inside, it wouldn't be worth it. It was like using 1,000 high-grade divine crystals to buy a divine stone, but there was only one high-grade divine crystal inside. The loss would be huge. Suddenly, a look of surprise flashed across Morongyu's face. This was because he saw a divine stone in a corner. Morongyu clearly saw a drop of blood flickering with divine light inside. That was the blood essence of God. Chapter 857. In the God's Blood, a small black dragon was writhing and exuding a terrifying pressure. Divine dragon? This was not just God's blood, but the blood essence of the divine dragon. I'm rich. Morongyu was shocked. However, although he was shocked, his expression remained calm, and his expression did not change. At the same time, he picked up the fist-sized God stone without batting an eyelid. Since he had discovered it, he would not let it go. However, in order not to attract too much attention, Moronyu also bought a few other God stones. These were purely useless stones and did not even have a piece of divine crystal. However, they were not cheap either. However, compared to the drop of blood essence of the divine dragon, they were nothing. How's the selection going? Moronyu came to Fantong and asked. Almost done. 10 pieces. Fantong laughed and took the God stones with his big hand before leaving the first-class area. After paying the bill, they were ready to cut the stones. However, it was a pity that the God stone that Fantong bought did not have much value. It was not worth it. However, although Fantong was disappointed, he did not take it to heart. After all, this fellow was extremely wealthy. It was only a few thousand divine crystals, so he didn't take it seriously. Moreover, stone gambling was all about luck. As the saying went, 9 stones out of 10 would come up empty. Brother, why don't you cut yours here too? Fantong turned to Morongyu and said. Morongyu had a piece of blood essence of the divine dragon sealed in his hands. According to Morongyu's plan, he would cut it after bringing it back. Otherwise, if the blood essence of the divine dragon was exposed, it would have a huge impact here. However, since Fantong said so, he also wanted to see how much the blood essence of the divine dragon was worth. Therefore, he handed the few God stones to the stonecutter of the mysterious star stone gambling Denver. You think you can win something? A disdainful voice was heard. It was a young man who called Morongyu a pauper previously. Morongyu did not even bother to look at him. Fantong cut off a few more God stones, but there was nothing left. There was only one left, and Fantong couldn't help but feel disappointed. However, Morongyu still had a faint smile on his face. The last God stone was the fist-sized God stone. After cutting more than half of it, a faint pressure began to emanate from it. The young man's face changed. He knew that at the very least, Morongyu wouldn't suffer any losses. Of course, he did not know if he could make a fortune. The surrounding people couldn't help but come closer. They all knew that there was something inside this divine stone. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to emit such a faint pressure. God's blood. God's rule? No matter if it's God's blood or God's rule, this kid won't lose anything. If it's a high-level God's blood or God's rule, this kid will make a fortune. The blood God stone continued to watch and discuss. There were strong and weak gods too. Of course, there were differences in God's blood. If it was the God's blood of a true God, it was almost worthless. However, if it was the God's blood of a top expert, like the Heavenly Emperor, it would be more valuable. It was the same for God's rule. Some God's rule contained less God's rule and was useless. However, some God's rule was extremely pure and high level. These were more valuable. However, It was rare for high-level God's blood and God's rule to appear. As the stonecutter of the mysterious star stone gambling den continued to cut, the God stone became smaller and smaller. On the contrary, the pressure was getting stronger and stronger. It's at least heavenly God's blood. It's possible that it's a Lord of heaven. Boom! Just as the blood God stone was peeled off, the God stone was peeled off. In an instant, a terrifying aura burst out and engulfed the entire black star gambling den. Bang! 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 Countless people around were directly sent flying by this terrifying pressure. Some of the decorations in the mysterious Starstone gambling den were smashed into dust by the terrifying pressure. Roar! At the same time, a shapeless dragon roar was heard, and a huge shadow of a black dragon soared into the sky. The terrifying pressure was unparalleled. Divine Dragon. The divine dragon's blood essence. Seeing this, the people in the mysterious Starstone gambling den were shocked. It was the divine dragon's blood essence. Moreover, its level was not low. It was at least heavenly god realm. After all, just a drop of blood essence was already so terrifying. What if this drop of blood essence activated all of the pressure? Moreover, this was only a drop of blood essence in the divine dragon's body. The power it contained was not even 1/10,000th of the divine dragon's blood essence. In that case, the divine dragon that left behind the blood essence was at least a heavenly god realm expert, or even a heavenly emperor realm expert. Oof. A cold snort was heard from the depths of the mysterious Starstone gambling den. Then, a huge hand pressed down. It was just a drop of essence blood that had not been activated, and it was just an invisible pressure that had burst out. Under the suppression of the expert in the mysterious Starstone gambling den, he suppressed it with one hand. Of course, if the power of the blood essence was fully activated, the expert in the mysterious Starstone gambling den might not be able to suppress it. On the contrary, he might be killed. Of course, many people in the mysterious Starstone gambling den would be killed if that happened. In a flash, a middle-aged man appeared in front of everyone. He reached out and grabbed the drop of divine dragon blood essence. A cold glint flashed through Murong Yu's eyes, while a murderous intent vaguely erupted from Fan Tong's body. After all, the drop of blood essence belonged to Murong Yu. Now, the people in the mysterious Starstone gambling den took it away? What was this? Bullying the customers? The middle-aged man looked around and frowned. He then looked at Murong Yu and said indifferently, "The blood essence has destroyed our mysterious Starstone gambling den. We will need to spend a lot of divine gems to repair it. This drop of blood essence will be the compensation for the damage done to the mysterious Starstone gambling den." Murong Yu laughed. He was so angry that he laughed. It was just a few buildings that were destroyed. A few divine gems would be enough. Here, it was not Murong Yu who was cutting the stones. It was the people in the mysterious Starstone gambling den. Even if the place was destroyed, what did it have to do with Murong Yu? How could they come up with such a lousy excuse? Murong Yu's heart was filled with murderous intent. The rest of the people in the mysterious Starstone gambling den also looked at the middle-aged man with disdain. Do you have any objections? The middle-aged man looked at Murong Yu. A powerful aura surged towards him like a torrent. "Give me the blood essence." Murong Yu's face was gloomy. He could not be bothered to talk nonsense with such a shameless person and said directly, "Did you not hear me? This drop of blood essence already belongs to our mysterious Starstone gambling den." The middle-aged man's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He already had murderous intent towards Murong Yu. "The person cutting the stones is from your mysterious Starstone gambling den. What does it have to do with me? Give me the blood essence. Otherwise, you will die." Murong Yu could not help but explode. "Ha ha ha!" The middle-aged man laughed out loud. He was a Sky Realm expert. Now, a puny true god wanted him to die? Was this a fantasy? The middle-aged man's eyes were cold and filled with murderous intent. With a sneer, he extended his hand and pressed it down on Murong Yu. With his Sky Realm strength, killing a true god was more than enough with just one finger. "Damn it! I want to kill this be***starred. Fan Tong was enraged. He took a step forward and was about to use his trump card to kill the man. Moreover, he was filled with murderous intent towards the mysterious Starstone gambling den and the city governor's mansion. If his subordinates were all trash, how good could his superiors be? However, Moronu stopped Fantong and said in a deep voice, "Trash like him isn't worth wasting your trump card on. I'll kill him." As he spoke, Moronu flipped his hand, and the long spear that he had obtained from the Bloody Hands mansion appeared in his hand. Virum. After the power was poured into the long spear began to tremble slightly, and an invisible pressure burst out. It was enough to shock the 9 heavens and 10 lands. At that moment, the power of Moronu's 3 godheads was instantly sucked dry. Virum, an extremely terrifying force that surpassed the middle-aged man's, was released from the long spear and instantly engulfed the entire mysterious star city. At the same time, a blinding ray of light shot out from the long spear and shot into the sky. "Die!" Moronu roared and stabbed the middle-aged man with the spear. What a terrifying aura! The middle-aged man was scared half to death and instantly lost his will to fight. He turned around and tried to escape. However, Moronu had used up all his power to activate the power of the weapon. How could he allow the middle-aged man to escape? "Stop!" At that moment, a loud roar came from the city governor's mansion. Then, a huge hand stretched out from the mansion and quickly suppressed Moronu. "Die!" Moronu roared, and the long spear suddenly sped up, bam. With a loud bang, the middle-aged man was smashed into millions of pieces. Even his soul was destroyed. However, after killing the middle-aged man, the terrifying aura of the weapon in Moronu's hand quickly dissipated, and it became an ordinary long spear. However, the faint aura that it emitted told everyone that it was a peerless weapon. Fantong rushed forward and grabbed the drop of divine dragon blood essence and the storage ring that the middle-aged man had dropped. There was no choice. Moronu's power had been depleted in an instant, and he was only left with the strength of his physical body. He did not have the speed and naturally left it to Fantong. "Didn't you hear me? I told you to stop. Why didn't you stop?" The huge hand that was pressing down disappeared after the middle-aged man was killed. However, a young man in a yellow robe appeared in the sky above the mysterious star gambling Denver. His aura was extremely violent, and his expression was cold. He looked at Moronu with killing intent. Chapter 858. Supreme Grade Divine Artifact. The yellow-robed youth looked at Moronu with a murderous look. No, to be exact, he was looking at the long spear in Moronu's hand. His eyes were filled with greed. In the divine world, even low-grade divine artifacts were not common goods. Everyone had one. Low-grade divine artifacts were extremely rare. It was equivalent to a first-grade immortal artifact in the divine world. Not everyone had one. The higher the grade of the divine artifact, the rarer it was. For example, there were only a few saint-grade divine artifacts in the entire divine world. Even if there were, they would be in the hands of the true giants. A true god could kill a Sky Realm expert just by activating the divine artifact in his hand. This was the power of a divine artifact. This was at least a superior grade divine artifact. However, the Schwanching City Lord Mansion was an overlord after all. The yellow-robed youth status in the City Lord Mansion was not low. Although he did not have the right to own a superior grade divine artifact, he had seen it before. The faint aura coming from the long spear in Moronu's hand made the yellow-robed youth excited. It was at least a supreme grade divine artifact. As for a supreme grade divine artifact, that was the strongest existence below the saint-grade divine artifact. The yellow-robed youth had never thought of it, nor did he dare to think of it. After all, how could such a powerful divine artifact appear in the hands of a true god? It was not common goods. In fact, Moronu's weapon was indeed a supreme-grade divine artifact. It was just that the yellow-robed youth did not dare to believe it. Supreme-grade divine artifact. If I have a supreme-grade divine artifact, even if I'm only in the early-stage Sky Realm, I'll be invincible. The greed in the yellow-robed youth's eyes intensified. Looking at the long spear in Murongyu's hand, he was almost drooling. Killing in the Xuanqing city is a capital offense. Killing the people of the City Lord Mansion is an additional offense. All of you must die. The yellow-robed youth shouted coldly as he reached out his hand to grab Murongyu. Rumble, the aura of a sky realm exploded and shot into the sky, covering the entire Xuanqing city. Previously, the terrifying aura of the Supreme Grey God artifact had already shocked the entire Xianxing city. However, the power of the divine artifact was simply too short. In less than an instant, it returned to normal. However, that terrifying aura had intimidated many people. Now, when the yellow-robed youth burst forth with the aura of a heaven monarch, the people of Xianxing City finally knew that something had happened here. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In less than a breath's time, the area around the mysterious star gambling den was surrounded by countless people. As long as one was a human, regardless of whether they were immortals or gods, they would always like to watch and enjoy the show. Surging waves of aura swept over, not to mention that Murongyu's strength had been completely depleted. Even if he was at his peak, he would still be killed. At this moment, Murongyu didn't even have the chance to escape. However, just because Murongyu did not have one, it did not mean that Fantong did not have one. At this moment, Fantong was enraged and his murderous aura was soaring. He took a step forward and stood in front of Murongyu. His eyes were cold and murderous as he said, "Stop it. Otherwise, you will die. The city governor's mansion will be destroyed because of you." With just you? The yellow-robed youth laughed. In fact, the yellow-robed youth was not the only one who did not believe it. Apart from Murongyu, no one else believed Fantong's words. However, Murongyu knew that if Fantong's trump card were to be activated, the consequences would be dire. Once the shadow of his father appeared, the entire Xianxing city would be razed to the ground with a single slap. However, some people were just despicable. They would not believe it until the very last moment. Moreover, the yellow-robed youth only had eyes for the Supreme Grey God artifact in Murongyu's hands. "Scram, or I'll kill you too," the yellow-robed youth shouted coldly. A terrifying force swept down and was about to kill Murongyu. Fantong was furious and was about to use his trump card to kill the yellow-robed youth. However, at this moment, boom, all of a sudden, an incomparably terrifying pressure pressed down from afar. Wherever it passed, the void would shatter into pieces. Rumble. Immediately, the defense array of the Xianxing city was activated. Suddenly, a huge energy shield enveloped the entire Xianxing city and emitted a faint divine light. However, even though the defense array of the Xianxing city was activated, the terrifying force had already rushed into the city. Plop, plop, plop. The experts who were originally floating in the void were swept by the terrifying pressure and fell from the sky one after another. They could not even stand in the void. Even the yellow-robed young man, who was about to attack, was knocked to the ground. His attack disappeared without a trace. This was just the beginning. When the terrifying pressure came crashing down, some of the weaker deities in the Xianxing city were directly crushed by it. This was also because the defense array of the Xianxing city was activated in time. Otherwise, the death rate would have been several times higher. What's going on? Everyone was shocked into a daze, and their faces were filled with confusion. Meanwhile, some of the weaker ones were filled with fear. Why did the defense array of the Xianxing city activate automatically? This is something that will only be activated when it is under extreme attack. Everyone was in a state of panic, especially those who had some understanding of the defense array of the Xianxing city. They all knew that the person who could force the defense array of the Xianxing city to activate automatically was definitely not a weakling. Roar! An incomparably furious voice rang out once again, directly shattering the boundless void. The defensive array of the celestial star city trembled violently, sending out beams of divine light that soared into the sky. Bang! 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 Everywhere the sound waves passed, blood splattered in the Xianxing city. Countless people were shocked to death. Even those who were stronger could not help but feel their blood boil. This was also because the defense array had blocked many of the attacks. Otherwise, even an overgod would have been shocked to death. People of the City Lord's mansion, gather at the City Lord's mansion immediately. Those who disobey will be killed. At this moment, an aura that was not inferior to the mysterious expert outside the city erupted from the City Lord's mansion. However, it was different from the violent and bloodthirsty aura of the mysterious expert who attacked the Xianxing city. This aura was rather gentle. Wherever it passed, the aura from the mysterious expert was dispelled one after another. Hearing the majestic voice, the yellow-robed youth's face changed slightly. He turned his head and looked at the supreme-grade god weapon in Murong Yu's hand reluctantly. However, he left quickly in the end. Roar! Another furious roar came. However, this time, the experts in the Xianxing city reacted. Although the roar was louder than before, it did not cause any damage to the Xianxing city. No one was injured. They were only shaken to the point where their blood boiled. After the roar, an extremely terrifying aura shot over from afar. At the same time, the people in the Xianxing city saw an overwhelming dark cloud that almost covered half of the sky rapidly enlarging and flying towards the Xianxing city. Divine dragon. Oh my god, that's a divine dragon. Soon, the dark cloud was close to the Xianxing city. At this moment, everyone finally saw what the black shadow was. It was not a dark cloud, but an extremely huge dragon that was tens of millions of miles long. Oh my god, didn't the dragon tribe go extinct long ago? Why is there a divine dragon here? The people in the Xianxing city went crazy. Dragons did exist. However, it was only a legend. This was because the invincible dragons of the primordial age had gone extinct. No one knew if they were extinct or had gone into seclusion. In any case, there were no dragons after the primordial age. However, Murong Yu had encountered a black dragon in the Dead Sea of the immortal world. That was a real dragon tribe. However, that black dragon should have survived since the primordial age. In the end, after leaving behind his inheritance, it still died. The dragon's aura was vast and mighty. It looked at the Xianxing city with murderous intent. A violent aura constantly erupted from its body, full of murderous intent. This is not a real divine dragon. It's just a dragon beast. Murong Yu and Fan Tong said to Fan Tong as they stood up and looked at the dragon beast in the sky. This dragon beast was the same as the one Murong Yu saw in the ghost realm. However, the dragon beast in the ghost realm was only the lowest level of demonic beast, only at the overgod realm. And now, this dragon beast was tens of thousands of times stronger than that dragon beast. At the very least, the pressure emitted by the yellow-robed, heavenly monarch realm youth who had attacked Murong Yu earlier paled in comparison to the dragon beast. It's at least at the heavenly king realm. It might even be at the heavenly emperor realm. Fan Tong's face darkened. Murong Yu nodded. He did not doubt Fan Tong's words. Although Fan Tong was not very strong, his father was. In the circle of overlords, what kind of experts had Fan Tong not seen before? It was still possible to distinguish a person's strength. I wonder why this dragon beast is attacking the city. Look at how it's raging and wreaking havoc. It seems to have a huge grudge against the Xianxing city. Murong Yu frowned and said, "This dragon beast is too strong. I'm afraid the Xianxing city can't stop it. We have to be prepared. If the situation goes wrong, we have to escape immediately," Fan Tong said in a low voice. As for whether they could leave now, didn't they see that the entire Xianxing city was covered by the city defense array? Even the teleportation formation was closed. Obviously, the City Lord Manor and the other forces that controlled the teleportation formation wanted them to stay and die with the Xianxing city. It was a little shameful. Dragon Beast, why are you attacking the city for no reason? A middle-aged man stepped into the air from the City Lord Manor and directly crossed the Lake City battle. He hovered in the sky and looked at the dragon beast in the distance and asked in a low voice. He was the City Lord of the Xianxing city, Xianxing. Peak Heavenly King Advanced Stage. Chapter 859. Everyone in Xianxing City must die. The dragon beast didn't say anything, but his spirit consciousness swept across the void. At this moment, everyone was exposed to his angry message. What's going on? The people in Xianxing City were shocked, not knowing what was going on. In the realm of the gods, even demonic beasts that had not gained intelligence would not casually attack a human city. After all, it was normal to kill humans in human settlements outside the city. Didn't humans often kill demonic beasts in the wild? However, demonic beasts would not attack a city, because they were powerful, even if they could destroy a city. There was no lack of true powerhouses among the humans. A city had billions of gods. If it was destroyed, it would naturally attract the attention of those powerhouses. At that time, the demonic beast would only die. Just like today, if the dragon beast was powerful enough to slaughter the entire Xianxing city. But in a few days, this dragon beast would definitely be killed by the powerhouses of the human race. However, in the realm of the gods, it was not uncommon for demonic beasts to massacre cities. For example, if someone killed the most important family member of these demonic beasts, it would naturally not appease the anger of these demonic beasts. I remember now, it's the Leaf family. Half a year ago, the Leaf family beheaded a heavily injured dragon beast and auctioned off the dragon beast's meat. Suddenly, a person cried out in alarm. Yes, I still remember that scene half a year ago. That dragon beast was said to have reached the peak of the heavenly king realm. But for some reason, it was heavily injured and was taken advantage of by a backup of the Leaf family. Maybe that dragon beast and this dragon beast were a pair, and now it has come to take revenge. Many of us ate the dragon beast's meat back then. Even now, the smell of the dragon beast still lingers on our bodies. It's over. No wonder the dragon beast was massacred. We all have the smell of the dragon beast. It would be strange if it didn't massacre the city. In Xianxing City, many people's faces turned green. Murong Yu's face changed slightly. He had eaten the dragon beast's meat back then. Although many years had passed, who knew if the dragon beast had some special method to sense the dragon beast smell on his body? It's all because of the Leaf family. The main culprit is the Leaf family. What's wrong with the Leaf family? Was he still a coward? Hurry up and force that dragon beast to retreat. If it wasn't for you guys, this dragon beast wouldn't have come all the way here. The Leaf family of the Xuanqing city was surrounded by countless people at this moment. All of them were roaring furiously. They blamed the Leaf family for the arrival of the dragon beasts. Leaf family, main hall. Countless clan experts gathered in the main hall, their faces livid with rage. One reason was because of the responsibility and roars of the people outside, and the other reason was because the Leaf family had killed the young man who had severely injured the dragon beast. An expert who had reached the Heaven Monarch realm. Being in the Heaven Monarch realm, he was already the #1 expert among the younger generation of the Li clan, although it hadn't been long since he broke through. In fact, he had only broken through half a year ago. It was precisely because he ate the dragon meat that he was able to break through in one go and become an existence at the level of the Leaf family's ancestor. However, at this moment, he was trembling with fear. If this matter was not handled properly, he would die, the Leaf family would be destroyed, and the entire Xuanqing city would be razed to the ground by the angry dragon beasts. Half a year ago, Li Zizai was outside when he encountered two monstrous demonic beasts fighting. In the end, both sides suffered great losses. After one of the demonic beasts left, he secretly targeted the dragon beast that was severely injured and blown to death. In the end, he launched a sneak attack and killed the dragon beast. Because of this dragon beast, the strength of countless people in the Leaf family increased by several times. And because of this dragon beast, they made a fortune. If this continued, the Leaf family's strength would grow stronger and stronger, and they might even become a first-rate family in the Xuanqing city. But this time, the dragon beast came for them. Li Zizai, this is all because of you. You have to face this matter. An elder of the Li family looked at Li Zizai with a gloomy face. He almost wanted to capture Li Zizai and send him to the dragon beast outside the city. If it wasn't for you, the dragon beast wouldn't have attacked the city. We wouldn't have suffered the disaster of being exterminated. One by one, they kept criticizing Li Zizai as if it had nothing to do with them. Bastard! Li Zizai was incomparably furious. Killing intent surged in his heart. It was true that he had picked up a bargain, but which one of the people present didn't benefit? In fact, Li Zizai dared to guarantee that the loudest voices were the greediest people back then. They must still have a lot of dragon beast meat on hand. When he dragged the dragon beast home, why didn't these people jump out to criticize him? Jump out to say that he was the culprit? All right, everyone, stop criticizing Zizai. Each and every one of you has received great benefits. Each of you has the aura of a dragon beast. Now, we can only get through this difficult situation together. Otherwise, our Li family will be destroyed. The patriarch of the Li family, Li Bainan, finally spoke. With the patriarch's words, everyone fell silent. However, our Li family doesn't have a heavenly king powerhouse. If we were to confront the dragon beast, we wouldn't be a match for it all. The dragon beast is at least at the heavenly king realm. An elder said helplessly. The Li family was a big family in the mysterious Star City. The entire family had more than 10 heavenly monarch powerhouses. Their patriarch, Li Bainan, had even reached the peak of the heavenly monarch realm. He was only one step away from the heavenly king realm. However, so what if he was infinitely close to the heavenly king realm? He was still not a heavenly king realm powerhouse. A true heavenly king realm powerhouse, even if he was only at the early stage of the heavenly king realm, could crush a peak of the heavenly monarch realm with a single finger. Furthermore, the dragon beast outside the city was not only at the early stage of the heavenly king realm. Didn't you see how terrifying that roar was? Didn't you see that even the Xianxing city lord, who had reached the peak of the heavenly king realm, had a serious expression on his face? We have to face this matter personally. Otherwise, even if we can survive the attack of the dragon beast, the city lord will not let us go. The entire Xianxing city will not let us go either. Now, follow me out to face the enemy. Li Bainan glanced at everyone and then soared into the sky. The Li family's heavenly monarch realm powerhouses had no choice but to soar into the sky. They crossed the Great City Barrier Array and came to the back of Xianxing. Other than them, many powerhouses of the Xianxing city had come out. However, although the Xianxing city was one of the biggest cities in the Dream Wilderness continent, there were very few heavenly king realm powerhouses. Including the city lord, Xianxing, there were only 5 heavenly king realm powerhouses. A heavenly king realm expert was already considered to be at the top of the divine realm. As long as they were not too arrogant, they could do whatever they wanted in the divine realm. How could an expert of this level be like a true God realm expert, running around the streets? Murong Yu thought to himself. Even in the heavenly Dao sect, there were not many heavenly king realm powerhouses. However, while there were few heavenly king realm powerhouses, there were more heavenly monarch realm powerhouses. There were already thousands of powerhouses who had left the Great City Barrier Array. What's more, there were still some who had not left. After all, the Xianxing city was so big. There were many families and forces. However, not every family was like the Li family, who sent out all their heavenly monarch realm powerhouses. Some families were even bigger than the Li family, but only 1 or 2 heavenly monarch realm powerhouses were sent out. Murong, you guessed that there should be tens of thousands of heavenly monarch realm powerhouses in the Xianxing city. There might even be 1 or 2 heavenly king realm powerhouses hidden. Dragon Beast, leave now. We'll write off what happened before. Otherwise, you're no match for us. Xianxing placed his hands behind his back and looked at the shrunken dragon beast in front of him indifferently. The aura of a peak heavenly king realm powerhouse was exposed. It was as if he could suppress the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Even so, the dragon beast body was thousands of miles long. Xianxing and the rest stood in front of them. They were like tiny particles. Roar! All of you must die. The dragon beast roared angrily. Then it spread out its divine sense again. The dragon beast's huge eyes, which were emitting a faint red light, stared at Li Zizai, who was behind Xianxing. With one look, it knew that it was this man who killed its other half. If it wasn't for the urgent matter, it would have rushed out to kill Li Zizai that day. But it couldn't leave. After waiting for half a year, it used a special method to follow the scent of its partner and came all the way here. But before it even got close to the Xianxing city, the killing intent in its heart became even more violent, because its other half's aura was everywhere in the Xianxing city. In other words, many people in the Xianxing city had eaten its partner's flesh. All of them must die. The dragon beast only had one thought in its mind, and that was to kill all of them. Only by doing so could it release the anger in its heart. Dragon beast, don't be so shameless. You may be strong, but you're only a heavenly king realm powerhouse. I'm not afraid of you. Xianxing's face was dark, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. As a peak heavenly king realm powerhouse, he naturally had his pride. He didn't want to fight the dragon beast, but it didn't mean that he was afraid of it. He just didn't want to waste his strength. Roar! What answered him was the dragon beast's roar and a huge claw. The dragon beast finally lost its patience and took the initiative to attack. Beast, you're courting death. Xianxing roared. In a flash, he rushed up and punched out. Rumble. After a loud explosion, a terrifying shockwave exploded. Even though the void of the divine world was extremely stable, it was still shattered by the terrifying shockwave. With a swoosh, Xianxing was sent flying by the terrifying shockwave. But the dragon beast didn't move at all. It was obvious who was stronger. But this was just the beginning. Bang! 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 As the terrifying shockwave swept across, those Heaven Monarch realm experts behind Xianxing were smashed into pieces by the shockwave, bursting into clouds of blood mist. After the shockwave passed, at least 2/3 of the Heavenly Monarch realm experts were killed. The rest of them were pale. The most unlucky one was the Li family. The entire family had more than 10 Heavenly Monarchs. Now only their family leader was left, the peak Heavenly Monarch realm expert, Li Bainan. Chapter 860. After the shock wave, the number of Heaven Monarch realm experts who were originally standing in the sky was reduced to just over 2,000 people in an instant. 2/3 of them were gone. Beast! Xianxing, who was at the peak of the Heavenly King realm, had only exchanged one blow with the dragon beast. However, he was sent flying while the dragon beast remained unmoved. This was already embarrassing enough for Xianxing. Furthermore, thousands of Heavenly Monarch realm experts had been killed because of their attack. This made Xianxing even more enraged. In Xianxing City, the City Lord Mansion was the absolute ruler. However, in order to maintain the normal operation of Xianxing City, the City Lord Mansion alone was not enough. All the major families had to work together. If all the experts of the major families were killed and only the City Lord Mansion was left, Xianxing would not be able to protect Xianxing City. After all, such a big city was coveted by countless people. Lord of Heaven, retreat to the city. Heavenly King, assist me in killing this beast. Xianxing was enraged. With a low roar, he turned into a streak of light in the sky and attacked the dragon beast. Hearing Xianxing's words, how could the frightened Lord of Heaven still dare to stay? They all rushed back to Xianxing City. As for the other 4 heavenly kings, they spread their bodies and attacked the dragon beast at the same time. Roar! Seeing the 5 heavenly king realm experts pouncing on it, the dragon beast was fearless and immediately engaged in a fierce battle with them. Boom! 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 Beams of divine light burst out continuously, tearing the void and shattering the earth. They kept on attacking the city defense array of Xianxing City. The city defense array kept on emitting dazzling divine light. The divine crystals were being depleted rapidly. The city defense array required energy to maintain. Every time it was attacked, an astronomical amount of divine crystals would be used up. In the long run, the divine crystals would be depleted one day. At that time, the city defense array would automatically be destroyed due to the lack of energy to maintain it. However, Xianxing City was one of the biggest cities in the Dream Wilderness mainland. It was impossible to deplete their divine crystals in a short time. Moreover, Xianxing and the rest knew that the power of their battle was too terrifying. It was a great pressure on Xianxing City. Therefore, in the midst of the battle, they unknowingly lured the dragon beast away from Xianxing City. After they left the mysterious Star City, the people in the city heaved a sigh of relief. Even with the protection of the city protecting Grand Array, the shock waves from Xianxing and the others' battle didn't enter the city. However, the Great City Barrier Formation could only block the power. Although it could block a portion of the pressure, it could still block a portion of it. However, it was impossible to organize all of them. As for the Dragon Beast and the others, they were all super powerhouses of the Heavenly King realm. Their pressure continued to erupt, and the people of Xianxing City could be killed at any time. Brother, which side do you think will win? Fantong suddenly asked Murongyu. At this moment, Murongyu's strength had recovered to its peak after devouring a few divine veins. There was nothing he could do about it. In this place where danger lurked everywhere, he could only maintain his combat prowess by returning to his peak state. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know how he died. Even though the might of a peerless divine artifact is terrifying, it consumes too much energy. If it weren't for the three godhoods, the power of just one godhood wouldn't be able to activate the power of a supreme great artifact. I definitely can't act so recklessly in the future. If I can't kill the other party with a single blow, then without any divine power, wouldn't I be like a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered? Even though Murongyu was shocked by the might of a peerless divine artifact, he knew how terrifying it was. Hearing Fantong's words, Murongyu shook his head. At this moment, Xianxing and the others were already far away from Xianxing City. Even if they were in Xianxing City, with their strength, they wouldn't be able to see their movements clearly. Even more so, they wouldn't be able to see how strong they were. However, Murongyu had an intuition. I feel that Xianxing and the others won't be able to do anything to the Dragon Beast. At the very least, they won't be able to kill the Dragon Beast. When he was in the Ghost Region, Murongyu had seen many demonic beasts attacking the Spectre Village. At that time, there were even demonic beasts that were many times stronger than the Dragon Beast. At that time, even the experts of the Spectre Village who were at the same level as the demonic beasts would find it extremely difficult to kill them. The physical bodies of the demonic beasts were extremely strong. Even though they didn't have a systematic cultivation technique, they had innate abilities. In addition to their strong physical bodies and terrifying strength, it was extremely difficult for true gods to kill them. Previously, Xianxing was sent flying with a single blow from the Dragon Beast. One could imagine that he was far from the Dragon Beast. So what if he had the help of 4 Heavenly King stage experts? I have the same feeling too. Fantong's eyes shone brightly. He had even seen Heavenly King stage experts before. Even though he was too weak to know which side was stronger, he could still vaguely feel it. However, this damn thing has caused us to suffer losses. Fantong cursed. The only reason this guy came to Xianxing City was to gamble on stones. However, after such a thing happened, which stone gambling den wouldn't have closed down long ago. Therefore, this made Fantong extremely unhappy. It's best if both sides suffer losses. Murongyu was laughing coldly in his heart. After he entered Xianxing City, he first saw Xianyu from the City Lord Mansion try and snatch a man. Then, he was robbed by Xianxing's stone gambling den. His intuition told him that Xianxing wasn't a good person. As the saying goes, if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. If the people below were like this, how good could the people above be? Moreover, this wasn't Murongyu's ultimate goal. The Dragon Beast's entire body was a treasure. Even if it was the Dragon Beast's meat, it contained extremely terrifying strength and the Dragon Beast's godly laws. It was extremely useful for condensing the godly body and godhood. Moreover, This was a heavenly king stage dragon beast. Murong didn't need these now, but he still had his family and loved ones. Zhao, Jiqing, and the rest would ascend to the god realm sooner or later. If they could get their hands on the dragon beast meat, they could quickly condense the godly body and godhood and become stronger. At the thought of his family, Murong heart couldn't help but tighten. He felt that his strength was increasing too slowly. If some experts who had cultivated for countless eras to reach the true god realm knew what Murong was thinking, they would probably give him a big slap. Wasn't that enough? However, they still didn't know how strong Murong's enemies were. Whether it was the Divine Union, the Immortal Palace, or the Devil Sect, they were all super forces in the four continents. Murong would be discovered by them sooner or later. At that time, they would definitely take action against Murong. Murong alone didn't matter. After all, the god realm was so big. At most, he would find a sacred mountain to cultivate and become stronger before coming out of seclusion to wipe them all out. However, he couldn't do that. He still had his family. Those people would ascend sooner or later. After all, they could only live for one era in the immortal world. In other words, Murong only had one era's worth of time. Although there was a limit to one's lifespan after becoming a true god, the lifespan would get longer with every increase in cultivation level. Murong, on the other hand, wouldn't just stand by and watch his loved ones die of old age. Therefore, he wanted to do everything he could to improve everyone's strength. He believed that one day, he would truly reach the realm of immortality and indestructibility. His family would be the same. Although Tian and the others were far away from the Mysterious Star City, the city protecting array of the Mysterious Star City wasn't shut down. No one could enter or leave the Mysterious Star City. Moreover, although everyone was in the Mysterious Star City, they could still hear the terrifying sounds and energy waves coming from afar. Although it was very weak, it was because they were too far away. Xing and the others were still fighting with the dragon beast. Finally, after 3 days, the terrifying pressure and energy waves disappeared. Another half a day later, 3 streams of light flew over from afar and rushed into the Mysterious Star City. They were the city lord Xing and the other 2 heavenly king realm experts. At this moment, the 3 of them were covered in blood. Their bodies had suffered terrible injuries, and their energy was in chaos. Obviously, they had suffered heavy injuries. The remaining 2 heavenly kings didn't come back with them. They had probably been killed by the dragon beast. The dragon beast has been pushed back. It won't be back in a short period of time. Remove the city protecting array and activate the teleportation array, Xing said, and rushed into the city lord's mansion. The remaining 2 heavenly kings also rushed back to their own families to heal their injuries. 2 heavenly king realm experts have died. Even Xing, who was at the peak of the heavenly king realm, was severely injured. But this only pushed the dragon beast back. Instantly, everyone in the Mysterious Star City was stunned. After the teleportation array was activated and the city protecting array was removed, those who didn't belong to the Mysterious Star City or those who chose the stars either teleported or flew out of the Mysterious Star City. Although the dragon beast had been repelled, who knew if it would come back and attack again? What could they use to block it? It was better to leave as soon as possible. Murong and Xing had the same plan. However, they didn't go to the teleportation array. Instead, they flew out of the Mysterious Star City. What? We're going to raid the dragon beast's nest? After hearing Murong's crazy idea, Fantong almost fell from the sky. However, this guy was obviously a daring person. After the initial shock, he became excited. But how do we know where the dragon beast's nest is? Well, this guy wasn't worried about the dragon beast's terrifying strength at all. With the dragon beast's strength, even if they didn't get close, it could kill them with its aura. Murong glanced at the enormous and unending white light that remained in the sky and smiled. I have a method to track the dragon's lair. That white light was the dragon beast's aura. When the dragon beast appeared, Murong had already memorized its aura. It was only at this moment that Murong finally realized how different he was. Even those who had the spatial godhead couldn't see the aura left behind by everyone in the sky. Only he was like this. Muronyu naturally didn't understand this, but he was more than happy. After all, it was better for him to be the only one who could control such a method. Otherwise, if he met such a person and was targeted by the other party, he would have nowhere to run. Chapter 861. Muronyu thought that it must have something to do with the space rules of order that he had comprehended. It was the Xi formula of the 9 syllables. The attributes of the Godhead were actually the rules of order. For example, the lightning divinity was the law of lightning. There was lightning in his attacks. However, there was another rule above the rules of order. The rules were above the rules of order. There is only one rule for every rule. For example, the space rules of order and the lightning rules of order. However, there are many types of rules. For example, under the water rules of order, there are the water rules of order and the ice rules of order. Normally, those who had comprehended the space rules of order would not be able to see the aura left behind by everyone like Muronyu. Only those who had comprehended the rules of order would be able to do so. Immediately, Muronyu and Fantong moved and followed the aura left behind by the dragon beast. Of course, other than Muronyu and Fantong, there were many others who had the same idea. However, these people did not have Murongyu's ability. After a few days, no one could follow them anymore. "Brother, can you really follow it?" Fantong could not help but ask along the way. He believed in Muronyu, but this was too unbelievable, because they were already billions of miles away from Xuanqing City. They had even crossed a region. "Trust me," Muronyu smiled. In terms of tracking ability, if he said that he was the second best in the realm of gods, no one would dare to say that they were the best. However, Fantong did not know. Moreover, even if Muronyu told him, he might not believe it. After all, it was too strange. 3 months later, "Do you really believe that you can follow it?" Fantong asked again, because they had been following it for a full 3 months. With their speed, they had crossed a few regions. Muronyu was also a little depressed. This dragon beast was so far away from Xuanqing City. Moreover, the dragon beast ability was too terrifying. It could still chase after them from such a long distance. Be careful, the dragon beast should be inside. At this moment, they had already entered deep into a mountain range with no end in sight. They were very careful, afraid that they would alert other demonic beasts. In fact, how could there be no other demonic beasts in the place where the dragon beast lived? At the very least, they were demonic beasts that were even stronger than dragon beasts. That was a Heavenly Emperor realm demonic beast. Thinking that there might be a Heavenly Emperor realm demonic beast nearby, Muronyu and the other man became even more cautious. They did not even dare to breathe heavily. There was no other way. They only had the strength of true God realm. If they encountered a Heavenly Emperor realm demonic beast, no, it should be said that before they even got close to that level of demonic beast, they would be shocked to death by the formless pressure emitted by the demonic beast. Thus, they hid during the day and went out at night. They were very careful. After a month, they finally arrived at a valley. It should be inside. After arriving, Muronyu and Jian Xiaotian sensed a powerful and familiar aura. It was the demonic beast that attacked the mysterious Star City. After arriving here, they didn't dare to make any moves because they didn't know if the dragon beast was alive or dead. What if the dragon beast was alive and well, and they barged in? Wouldn't that be courting death? Wealth comes from danger. After the two of them were silent for a while, they looked at each other and then quietly walked towards the depths of the valley. The closer they got to the depths of the valley, the more terrifying the pressure of the dragon beast became. It was simply suppressing the 9 heavens and 10 earth. After walking for more than half a day, the two of them stopped. It wasn't that there were demonic beasts in front of them, nor was it that they were being targeted. Instead, the aura was too strong, and they were unable to continue forward. The gap between them and a heavenly king stage powerhouse was too great. "Hee, I'm here." Fantong chuckled and patted his body. In an instant, a light barrier appeared. allowing Murongyu to enter it headfirst. This light barrier could even withstand the pressure of the bloody hand back then, let alone this dragon beast that was only a heavenly king's stage. With this light barrier, Murongyu and Jian Shaodian were completely unobstructed and directly rushed into the depths of the valley. Be careful, the dragon beast is right in front. Not long after, they saw the dragon beast's huge body crawling on the ground. Dead. Fantong and Murongyu looked at each other, their eyes revealing a hint of surprise. This was because they couldn't feel any life force from the dragon beast. In other words, the dragon beast was already dead. However, the dragon beast was still emitting such a terrifying aura when it was dead. These top powerhouses were indeed terrifying. However, Murongyu and Jian Shaodian were still worried. Who knew if the dragon beast was faking its death? Therefore, the two of them waited for another 3 months before they were finally sure that the dragon beast was completely dead. Let's go to the dragon beast's lair and take a look. There must be something good. Murongyu and Jian Shaodian quickly passed by the dragon beast's corpse and arrived at the dragon beast's lair. This was an incomparably huge cave, tens of thousands of miles wide. It was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. However, what made Murongyu and Jian Shaodian depressed was that although the cave was big, there was nothing other than a huge egg in the middle of the cave. This huge white egg was huge, half a head taller than Murongyu and Fantong combined. Other than that, it would probably take 2 Murongyu and Fantong to wrap their arms around it. This should be the dragon beast's egg, right? Murongyu and Fantong looked at each other. If this was the dragon beast's egg, they could basically guess what had happened before. Half a year ago, a powerful demonic beast came to snatch the territory. Another dragon beast fought with it and was severely injured in the end. As for this female dragon beast, it should be during the process of laying the egg and did not make a move. It was precisely because of this that the Leaf family took advantage of the situation and killed the male dragon beast. It also took half a year for the female dragon beast to lay the dragon beast's egg and then went to take revenge. However, even though the dragon beast is dead, it still emits such a terrifying pressure. Valley family's Lizitsai had not even reached the heavenly monarch realm before. How did he kill the dragon beast? Could it be that the dragon beast's divinity was taken away? There was no more energy left on its body? Fantong guessed. It doesn't matter. The dragon beast is already dead. What do we do with this egg? Roast it and eat it. It is said that the dragon beast's egg contains an extremely shocking amount of energy that is extremely beneficial to a person's cultivation. Fantong said with a chuckle. He did not know if the dragon beast's egg had already produced a baby dragon beast. When he heard Fantong's words, Murongyu clearly saw the dragon beast's egg tremble, as if it was afraid. This egg is so big, you can't finish it. Moreover, it's too wasteful. If the baby dragon beast hatches, when it matures, it will be a super battle force. Who knows, it might even evolve into a real divine dragon. At this point, Murongyu's heart suddenly moved. When he was in the immortal world, he had obtained the Black Dragon's inheritance. Although the Black Dragon was more wretched, it was still a real divine dragon. If the Black Dragon's inheritance was passed on to the baby dragon beast, it might really evolve into a real divine dragon. Thinking of this, Murongyu could not help but look forward to it. In that case, you can keep this dragon beast's egg. Fantong said indifferently. He was just casually saying, what kind of things had he not eaten before? At this time, he was already staring at the incomparably huge dragon beast's corpse. This dragon beast's corpse was full of treasures. With a thought, Murongyu immediately put the dragon beast's egg into his storage space. Then, he looked at the dragon beast's corpse that was tens of thousands of miles long and worried after staring at each other for a while. Murongyu asked Fantong, can your interspatial ring hold it? Fantong shook his head. No, what about yours? Murongyu was immediately speechless. My storage ring is the trashiest storage ring in the immortal world. The space inside can't even hold a small mountain. At this time, Morong, you missed Hichu Luoshu again. If he had Hichu Luoshu, not to mention that the dragon beast corpse was only tens of thousands of miles long, even if it was hundreds of millions of times longer, it would still be able to hold it. Could it be that we can only look at it? Morong, you sighed. He did not want to let go of the dragon beast corpse. Then, he stared at Fan Tong. Don't you have a strong background? Your father is so powerful, but he didn't give you such a big storage ring? Fan Tong immediately showed a bitter expression. My life is very difficult. My father is very cruel to me. Moreover, storage rings and the like are originally very difficult to refine. The bigger the space, the harder it is to refine. Moreover, only those with spatial divine deity can refine a relatively large space. Of course, as long as there are materials, many people can refine those common goods. But the space is pitifully small. Could it be that there are no spatial divine tools in the immortal world? The Heavenly Tao sect clearly has an extremely large space mountain Hichu, and there are not only one or two. The Heavenly Tao sect's mountain Hichu? That requires the consumption of divine crystals. The larger the space, the more terrifying the consumption of divine crystals. The real space, I'm afraid, can't even hold this dragon beast. Is there no divine tool with a huge space? Of course there is, but those are in the hands of the big shots in the immortal world. Moreover, every time that kind of divine tool appears, it will cause a reign of terror, and blood will flow like a river. Murong Yu's heart sank. It seems that a spatial treasure like Hichu Luoshu is a rare existence no matter where it is. If the news of Hichu Luoshu is exposed, I'm afraid that even the top experts in the immortal world will come to snatch it. This secret must not be exposed. However, Murong Yu's heart sank fiercely, and so did his heart. Back then, the young master of the Divine Union had stayed in the immortal world. It was possible that he knew about Hichu Luoshu. Moreover, the Immortal Palace and the others might also have gotten the news. Once Murong Yu's identity was exposed, these people might take action against him. It might even repeat the scene of being the enemy of the whole world. What should we do? Murong Yu looked at Fan Tong. Forget it. Let's eat first and then take as much as we can. Fan Tong gritted his teeth and laughed. Murong Yu nodded. This was the only way. Perhaps he could also use the power of the dragon beast meat to break through to the true God realm and his other two divine deities. Chapter 862. Even though the dragon beast was dead, its ferocious aura was still present. The terrifying aura of a heavenly king could be felt from afar, intimidating the entire area. Ordinary demonic beasts didn't even dare to get close. After all, no demonic beast knew that the dragon beast was dead. As for those demonic beasts that were stronger than the dragon beast, they wouldn't even bother to snatch the dragon beast territory. Hence, in the following period of time, Murong Yu and Fan Tong were here, roasting the dragon beast meat. However, even though the dragon beast was dead, it wasn't easy for them to eat the dragon beast meat. Firstly, the dragon beast's aura was too terrifying. They couldn't move freely here. They could only rely on Fan Tong's protective shield to resist. Moreover, the dragon beast's skin was very thick. With Murong Yu and Fan Tong's strength, they couldn't break the dragon beast's skin. Fortunately, the dragon beast was already heavily injured. Its body was covered with shocking wounds. Furthermore, Murong Yu and Murong Yu both possessed peerless divine artifacts. If the dragon beast was still alive, even if it stood there and let Murong Yu and Fan Tong cut it with their supreme great god artifacts, they wouldn't be able to hurt the dragon beast. But now a large piece of it was cut off. Fan Tong, let's go deeper into the cave and find a place to isolate this terrifying aura. I want to break through here. Murong Yu muttered to Fan Tong. He had a feeling that if the primal god lattice could break through to the true god stage, perhaps Hichu Luoshu would return. Moreover, the primal chaos celestial record had already broken through. There was no need to continue comprehending the cultivation technique. As long as he had enough strength, he could break through. I want to cultivate too. Fan Tong nodded. After seeing these experts make a move, Fantong also felt pressured. Actually, the most important thing was that he had one less trump card after using it. At this rate, he would soon run out of trump cards. At that time, would he still be able to survive in the Dream Wilderness land? Hence, he had to become stronger. The cave where the dragon beast was very deep. Murong Yu and Lu Li were separated by a few hundred kilograms of dragon beast meat, and only stopped after they had traveled for hundreds of thousands of miles. Here, the dragon beast pressure was not as terrifying. It was barely enough for Murong Yu and Yi Zichen to withstand. Eat dragon meat, refine energy, and cultivate. The dragon meat contained a lot of energy, but whether it was Murong Yu or Fan Tong, if they wanted to break through, they would need a lot of energy. Year after year passed. Whenever they finished eating the dragon meat, they would go back and dig for more. During this process, Murong Yu's primal god lattice and spatial god lattice were also rapidly gathering energy. Of course, lightning divinity was not far behind. However, what made Murong Yu feel a little helpless was that the fastest condensing speed of his power was still the spatial godhead. The power of space was simply too abundant. It was everywhere. After being absorbed by the spatial godhead quickly reached the peak of the late-stage true god realm. Next was the primal chaos god lattice. The speed at which the tree of life absorbed the power of chaos was not slow. Compared to ordinary people, it was many times faster. However, it was still far too slow. On the 10th year, Murong Yu's spatial godhead was the first to break through, reaching the early stage true god realm. However, after Murong Yu broke through, the speed at which the spatial godhead was increasing also slowed down. In reality, the spatial godhead's absorption and refinement speed did not slow down. On the contrary, it increased by many times. However, in order to increase one's strength in the true god realm, the amount of energy needed was even greater. It was also because of this that in the divine world, the higher one's cultivation level was, the harder it was to break through. Of course, with the long lifespan of a true god, it was still possible for them to increase the power of their godhead to the limit. However, the bottleneck of every cultivation level was a barrier that limited countless true gods. Countless true gods exhausted their lifespan, but were still unable to break through. After all, true gods were not immortal. They also had a limit to their lifespan. Because Murong Yu's lightning divinity had already broken through, his spatial godhead did not trigger any godhead. Thus, Murong Yu was able to continue cultivating the primal god lattice. On the 20th year, as Murong Yu's body shook violently, the primal god lattice finally broke through and reached the early true god realm. It was also at this moment that the faintly discernible connection between Murong Yu and the He Tu and the Luo Shu suddenly strengthened countless times. Following which, He Chu's voice sounded in his mind. Young master, Murong Yu was instantly excited. He did not even have the time to check how much stronger he had become after this breakthrough. With a thought, he had already entered the He Chu Luo Shu world. He Chu Luo Shu was still the same as before. It was boundless and endless. However, Murong Yu was shocked to discover that although He Chu Luo Shu did not seem to have changed, it had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. The landscape was exactly the same as before, but the environment had changed. Why is this place the same as the divine world? The elemental energy of heaven and earth is actually elemental energy? Murong Yu was a little surprised. One had to know that when he was in the immortal world, He Chu Luoshu's environment did not change. It was the same as the cultivation world. It was not filled with immortal spiritual energy like the immortal world. Now, it was like a small divine world. The elemental energy here was even denser than the primal desolation continent. Although it was not as good as the dream desolation continent, it was not bad. It was suitable for ordinary people to cultivate. Moreover, Murong Yu could feel that He Chu Luoshu's space was billions of times stronger than when he was in the immortal world. When he punched out, there was not even a layer of ripple in the void. It It was even more impossible for the void to be destroyed by a punch. This change is too big. What the hell happened? Moronyu's heart stirred, and he immediately pulled Hichu over. When Hichu appeared beside him, Moronyu only glanced at Hichu, and then he was shocked. Hichu, your strength is actually higher than mine? What realm are you at? Heavenly King, Hichu said faintly, and then Moronyu staggered and almost fell down. This is not fair. I fought for my life in the divine world to reach the true God realm, but you did nothing and you've already reached the Heavenly King realm. Moronyu was speechless. However, he wasn't jealous or anything. It was better for Hichu to become stronger. It would be best if he reached the Heavenly Emperor realm or something. That would only be good for him. Suddenly, Moronyu's heart stirred, and he looked at Hichu. Aren't you about to recover to your peak condition? Tell me, who is War God's enemy? I should be qualified to know now, right? Recover to peak condition? You're still far from it. As for the previous master's enemy, with your current strength, it won't do you any good to know. Hichu said faintly, I'm already in the true God realm. Even if War God's enemy is a heavenly venerable, I should be qualified to know now, right? When you're strong enough, I'll naturally tell you. It's indeed not suitable for you to know now. Hichu continued, but he did not tell Moronyu. Could there be an even stronger existence above the heavenly venerable? Moronyu pondered, and he did not dwell on this matter. He asked again, what happened all these years? Why can't I contact you? Hichu Luoshu is leveling up. When you ascended to the God world, Hichu Luoshu started to level up. It's connected with the God lattice. As you can see, Hichu Luoshu is about the same as the God world now. As you become stronger, Hichu Luoshu's space will become firmer, and the God elemental energy will become denser. It's more suitable for cultivation. How long does it take to level up? Why can I only contact him after my primal God lattice breaks through? Moronyu asked, puzzled. Hichu Luoshu's level up is directly related to your primal God lattice. The stronger the primal God lattice, the stronger Hichu Luoshu will be. If your primal God lattice is unable to step into the true God realm, you will never be able to contact Hichu Luoshu. What if I didn't condense the primal God lattice? Then wouldn't I never be able to contact Hichu Luoshu? Moronyu frowned and asked. That's exactly the case. However, you have a primal celestial body, and you cultivate the primal celestial body record, so you will definitely be able to condense the primal God lattice. However, you are actually able to condense the spatial God lattice and the lightning divinity. A total of 3 God lattices. This is truly unprecedented. Hichu couldn't help but exclaim, it should be unprecedented. Moronyu chuckled. As they were speaking, Moronyu intentionally sensed the transfer array that he set up. He discovered that he could still sense it. In other words, he could finally transfer through Hichu Luoshu. Moreover, he didn't need to worry about his storage space not being big enough. I wonder how the Tian Fa order is doing. After regaining contact with Hichu Luoshu, the Tian Fa order was once again open to Moronyu. With a thought, he arrived at the Tian Fa order's world. Butler Tian immediately appeared in front of Moronyu. Young master, do you want to ask why you weren't able to contact the Tian Fa order all these years? Actually, this is related to Hichu Luoshu. Following Butler Tian's explanation, Moronyu was rather shocked. Once again, he recognized how powerful Hichu Luoshu was. In reality, the Tian Fa order didn't level up like Hichu Luoshu. However, because the Tian Fa order was inside Hichu Luoshu, when Hichu Luoshu leveled up, the Tian Fa order was actually blocked. What was the Tian Fa order? That was something that was personally created by heaven, and it was extremely powerful. Hichu Luoshu was even able to block such an existence. It was truly powerful. However, what disappointed Moronyu was that there weren't any changes to the Tian Fa order. There weren't any changes at all. The Tian Fa world was still the same as before. The strongest person inside was only in the quasi-god stage. There were only things like immortal veins. However, What made Moronu gratified was that the Tion Fa order could still be obtained by killing villains to exchange for god pills, god medicines, and even increase one's cultivation. However, the required number of star points would be even more terrifying, so much so that it made one's hair stand on end. Chapter 863. The Tion Fa token was the same as before. This also prevented Moronu from obtaining a large number of divine veins from the Tion Fa world, which was close to cheating. In the future, if Moronu wanted to obtain resources, he could only rely on him. Although this made him a little unhappy, this was a normal situation. Otherwise, if he had to obtain all kinds of resources from the Tion Fa world like before, Moronu would inadvertently lose his will to fight. Therefore, although Moronu felt a little regretful, he quickly put it aside. Now that Hichu Luoshu had returned, it was already a great thing. At least, there was a huge space and he could teleport. Most importantly, if he saw something good in the future, he would no longer have to worry about the storage ring being too small. Rumble. Just at this moment, a powerful aura swept out and swept across the entire world. Moronu frowned slightly. His spiritual consciousness quickly withdrew from the Tion Fa token and returned to the dragon's nest. Ha ha ha! This handsome guy has finally broken through to the heavenly god realm. As soon as Moronu opened his eyes, he saw a violent, powerful, and unstable aura emanating from Fantong. At this moment, he was laughing wildly with his hands on his hips. This guy was too complacent. Moronu almost covered his eyes with his hands and pretended not to know this guy. It was too embarrassing. Fortunately, there was no one else here. Otherwise, Moronu would definitely say that he did not know this guy. He could not afford a loose face like this. After half a day, Fantong finally stopped laughing. Instead, he looked at Moronu with battle intent. "Brother, let's spar." Moronu nodded with a smile on his face. Then he grabbed at the air, and a long spear that was at the level of a divine artifact appeared in his hand. "Come on, let me test your strength." Fantong staggered and almost fell to the ground. He did not forget that not long ago in the Xianxing city, Moronu was able to activate the power of this divine artifact and kill a heavenly god. That was a heavenly god. With a slap, even 1,000 heavenly gods would be killed. Even if Moronu did not fully activate the power of the divine artifact, it was enough to kill Fantong, who had just reached the heavenly god realm. I just remember that I have just broken through and my power is not stable. I will go and consolidate my cultivation first. Fantong smiled embarrassedly. His body flashed, and he quickly disappeared in front of Moronu. Moronu smiled and withdrew his body into his dantian. Then, he took out the He-Tu and Luo-Shu, which floated above his head. Streams of power fell down and enveloped his entire person. Aura Isolation. The Heavenly King Stage Draconic Beast's aura had no effect on Moronu. One had to admit that the Hichu Luo-Shu was strong. Actually, Moronu did not want to fight with Fantong. Although Fantong's fighting strength was also very strong, Moronu's 3 godheads had already reached the true god realm. If all 3 godheads were to explode, he could easily defeat Fantong. This was the reason why he did not want to fight with Fantong. It was not that he was afraid of hurting Fantong. It was completely unnecessary. "Hichu, can you keep this dragon into the Hichu Luo-Shu?" Moronu communicated with Hichu in his mind. "Yes, but young master, you have to enter the Hichu Luo-Shu first. Otherwise, the dragon's aura will kill you the moment it is collected." Hichu replied. Moronu's face darkened. Was Hichu looking down on him? However, it did not matter. He would surpass this dragon sooner or later. Immediately, he entered the Hichu Luo-Shu world. The moment he entered the Hichu Luo-Shu, the Hichu Luo-Shu expanded with the wind. In an instant, it covered the entire sky. Then, under Hichu's control, a huge suction force acted on the dragon's corpse. With a swoosh, the dragon's huge body disappeared on the spot. It had been collected into the Hichu Luo-Shu world. So much dragon meat. When Jiqing and the others ascend, they can refine this dragon meat and quickly condense their godheads, and quickly increase their cultivation. Murongyu came to the dragon's side with a smile. In the Hichu Luoshu world, Murongyu was the master, not to mention the heavenly King Realm Dragon Beast's aura. Even the heavenly Emperor Realm Dragon Beast's aura had no effect on Murongyu. This was because as soon as they entered the Hichu Luoshu, they would be suppressed by the Hichu Luoshu. Even when they were not dead, it would be the same, let alone when they were dead. It's a pity that although the dragon meat contains great power, it has little effect on me. It is useless. Murongyu had 3 godheads. The power required for each godhead was not ordinary. Moreover, the power required was too great. If he refined the entire dragon beast, he might be able to increase his cultivation level. However, it would be too wasteful. It would be better to give it to the people who would ascend after Shenzhen. Now, if Murongyu wanted to increase his strength quickly, he could only find a huge amount of power. For example, the lightning pool in the Bloody Hands Mansion. In addition to this power, he had to find more divine veins, chaos divine veins, and other heaven and earth treasures that contained great power. However, there were simply too few of them. The ones that could be discovered had already been discovered by others. With the dragon beast meat, even if I did not ascend to the god realm, I can condense a divine body in the immortal world and condense godhead. After becoming a god, I will have a longer lifespan, and I will find time to go back to the immortal world. Anyway, it is not so easy to conquer a place in the god realm. Murongyu frowned slightly. He wanted to take down the heavenly Dao sect. With this little strength, it was simply a fool's dream. In fact, Murongyu had another way, and that was to bring Shenzhen's people to Hichu Luoshu. After all, the divine origin Shi in Hichu Luoshu was very rich and suitable for ordinary people to cultivate. However, Hichu Luoshu followed Murongyu. Murongyu was destined to continue to take risks, and there were too many enemies. If Hichu Luoshu was taken by the enemy, or lost in some dangerous place, Murongyu would not be doing them well, but harming them. Roar! 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 At this time, waves of angry roars were constantly heard, and a powerful aura was rapidly approaching. These must be the monsters in the nearby area. After discovering that the dragon beast's aura had disappeared, they wanted to come and see the situation, or even snatch the territory. Hichu, show your heavenly king realm aura and scare these monsters away. Hichu quickly contacted Hichu. Immediately, Hichu burst out a powerful aura, soaring into the sky and sweeping across the land. Although it was not as violent and tyrannical as the dragon beast's aura, but it was not weak. Immediately, those demonic beasts stopped in their tracks. After letting out a few angry roars, they left unwillingly. They must have thought that this place had been occupied by other monsters. Moreover, the aura of this monster was not weak. The other monsters thought that there was no need to fight to the death, so they would not come over for the time being. In the following days, Murongyu did not continue to refine the dragon beast meat. Instead, he studied the dragon beast's giant egg. The dragon beast was actually considered to be part of the primordial dragon clan. It was just that the dragon clan's bloodline was too low and was not recognized by the dragon clan. In the process of refining the dragon beast meat, Murongyu also felt that there was a huge gap between the dragon beast bloodline and that drop of dragon blood. I wonder if that drop of dragon blood essence will improve the bloodline of the little dragon beast? Murongyu suddenly had this thought in his mind. If people knew that he wanted to give an incomparably precious drop of dragon blood to a dragon beast that had not been born yet, how many people would fight Murongyu to the death? If the dragon blood could improve the dragon beast bloodline and let it become a true dragon clan, then it would obtain the inheritance of the black dragon. Once it grew up, it would definitely be a top expert in the divine realm. This account is worth it. Murongyu thought for a while and decided. If it was not for the fact that the dragon beast had not been born yet, he was afraid that he would have immediately given the dragon blood to the dragon beast. Then where is the dragon beast's corpse? A few days later, Fantong woke up from his closed-door cultivation. His cultivation had stabilized, and his aura had also stabilized. Not long after, when he came out, he found that the dragon beast was gone. He could not help but be shocked. If he did not see Muronyu standing in front of him safe and sound, he would have thought that the dragon beast's corpse and Muronyu had been snatched away by a strong expert or a powerful demonic beast. Which bastard took the dragon beast's meat away? Before Muronyu could speak, Fantong roared with a murderous aura. How dare you steal my things? See if I don't kill this bastard. Brother, who is it? Fantong cursed, but did not notice that Murongyu's eyes were emitting a dangerous aura. Hee, you guys are really here. Before Murongyu could speak, he heard a light laughter from afar. Looking towards the direction of the sound, Murongyu and Fantong saw that not far away, a group of more than 10 people were flying towards them. It was a young girl who looked to be in her 20s. She was wearing revealing clothes, revealing her breasts, but her figure was very hot. In addition to her attire, the few young men beside her kept looking at her. In addition to this young girl and those young men, there were also a few middle-aged men and young men. All of them had surging chi and blood, and their auras were soaring to the sky. Their strength was not weak at all. Soon, this group of people landed in the cave and appeared in front of Murongyu and Fantong. Who are you? Fantong frowned slightly, glanced at the young girl, and said indifferently, How dare you not kneel and greet Miss Xianyu when you see her? A young man stepped forward and shouted coldly at Murongyu and Fantong. Chapter 864. You're that B*TCH who has thousands of men pressing her down? When a young man shouted coldly, Fantong was so frightened that he took a step back and cried out involuntarily. Hearing Fantong's words, Murongyu and Xianyu's faces darkened. Fantong was too direct. How dare you? As expected, before Fantong could finish his words, Xianyu's face exploded with killing intent. You're courting death. The young men beside her, who should be Xianyu's gigolos, were enraged and looked at Fantong with killing intent. Some of them even took large strides forward and closed in on Fantong. How dare you insult Miss Xianyu? You deserve to die. One of the young men looked at Fantong with killing intent. His voice was cold and filled with killing intent. Sometimes, people's thoughts were extremely strange. Just like Xianyu, who had thousands of gigolos and was famous for being a slut in Xianxing City. Slut. Everyone knew this. However, Xianyu did not want others to talk about her like this. If she found out that people were talking about her as a slut, etc., she would use the power in her hands to kill all of these people. A slut's chastity was even worse than this. Don't kill him. Just take him down. I want to have a taste of him. At this time, Xianyu finally spoke. Her voice was filled with charm. However, the words she said made Murongyu and Fantong feel extremely disgusted. Damn it, you B*TCH. Slut? Slut. Bitch. You want to play with this young master? You must be blind. Fantong immediately cursed, and his face turned red. Who was he? As long as he said something and expressed his thoughts, there would be countless big forces advancing, and many pure and innocent girls would be willing to come over. For a slut like her, who had thousands of men pressing her down, it would be bad luck to be close to him. Of course, Murongyu and Fantong, especially Murongyu, did not look down on prostitutes. Some people were forced by life, while others had to endure humiliation for various reasons. Even if they were prostitutes, Murongyu would not look down on them, nor would he despise their profession. However, some people were willing to lower themselves. For example, a woman like Xianyu, who had a myriad of men, was truly worthy of contempt and disdain. Xianyu's father was the city lord of Xianxing City. He was a powerful force even in the Dream Wilderness mainland. What did Miss Xianyu not have? Yet, she was willing to lower herself like this. How could others think highly of her? Damn it. The people around Xianyu were all enraged. One of the young men could not hold back his killing intent. He jumped out and charged towards Fantong. A mere early-stage heavenly deity dares to be so impudent? You're simply courting death. The young man who attacked was very powerful. He was a late-stage heavenly god. He was 2 stages higher than Fan Tong. All of you are trash. Every single one of you is good stuff. You're wasting resources in this world. Today, I'll get rid of all of you. Fan Tong's face was gloomy and murderous. In a flash, he turned into a ray of light and charged towards the young man. The young man sneered and threw out a punch. In his mind, Fan Tong was only an early-stage heavenly god. There was a gap of 2 stages between them. How could Fan Tong be a match for him? However, the young man's face changed very quickly. This was because an intense aura of death rose in his heart. At the same time, an illusory figure appeared out of thin air. An aura that surpassed that of a heavenly god erupted. It was extremely terrifying. Bang! Before the young man could react, the illusory figure had already slammed into his body. After a loud bang, the young man was turned into a cloud of blood mist. Even his soul was turned into dust. He couldn't be more dead. A late-stage heavenly god's godhead. How's that? Fan Tong reached out and grabbed the godhead left behind by the young man. He kept it in his storage ring. At this moment, Xin Yu and the rest finally saw what the illusory figure was. It was a long whip. It's at least a supreme gray god weapon. It might even be a peerless gray god weapon. One of the old men behind Xin Yu suddenly exclaimed. He was excited and his face was filled with greed. A peerless gray god weapon? Everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Their eyes were filled with greed as they looked at Fan Tong. A peerless gray god weapon. Even Xian Xing, the city lord of Xian Xing City, didn't have such a weapon. However, a mere heavenly god had one. Moreover, it wasn't just Fan Tong who had one. The person beside him also had one. It's really a peerless gray god weapon? Even Xian Yu couldn't stay calm. Her eyes were filled with greed and lust as she looked at Fan Tong and the young man. The gazes of the others were still all right. However, Xian Yu's gaze was like a pervert looking at an innocent girl. Fan Tong couldn't help but feel disgusted. It's at least a supreme grade god weapon. Miss, if our Xian Xing City could get our hands on this supreme grade god weapon, our strength would skyrocket. Moreover, this lad should have a supreme grade god weapon on him as well. The old man who exclaimed earlier hurriedly added, if we can take them down, our Xian Xing City would have 2 more supreme grade god weapons. Xian Yu's eyes shone brightly. She then pointed at Murong Yu and said, kill him and take the other one down. Don't kill him. Murong Yu's weak heart was immediately hurt. Was he being looked down upon by Xian Yu? He wasn't ugly, right? From now on, Murong Yu believed that there weren't only perverts in this world. There were women as well. Hold on. I'm curious. How'd you guys find this place? Seeing that the old men were about to attack, Murong Yu suddenly asked. Of course, it's because of the dragon beast. However, I didn't see the dragon beast, but I saw you guys. You guys have given me a surprise. Xian Yu laughed. Perhaps she thought that Murong Yu was dead, so she said it out loud? What bunch of trash. It took you a few decades to find this place. A bunch of trash. The dragon beast meat was already in our stomachs. Fan Tong said disdainfully. Then he was stunned. It seemed that he didn't know where the dragon beast's corpse went. A supreme grade god weapon is worth billions of dragon beasts. What are you waiting for? Xian Yu shouted coldly. Immediately, an old man and a middle-aged man stepped forward from the group of people behind her. They were very strong. Even if they weren't at the heavenly king realm, they were still at the heavenly monarch realm. You guys are courting death. Fan Tong was furious. He was about to use his trump card to kill these people. However, at this moment, Murong Yu walked up to him and gave him a meaningful glance. I don't need to know your trump card. I'll deal with these people. Fan Tong stared at Murong Yu angrily. You can deal with them? Murong Yu smiled faintly. He turned to Xian Yu and said slowly, before you guys make a move, I suggest you guys think twice. If you guys really do make a move, I can guarantee that you won't be the only ones to die. Xian Xing and the entire Xian Xing City will become our enemy. I don't mind killing all of you in one fell swoop. Ha! This is too funny. Who do you think you are? You're just a true god. So what if you have a supreme grade god weapon? You're still a piece of trash. Is that so? Then why don't you come out and let's fight one-on-one? I'll only use one hand. Muronyu looked at the young man and smiled faintly. The young man's smile froze. Muronyu had a supreme grade god weapon. If he really dared to make a move, he would definitely be killed by Muronyu. Hence, he was terrified. Trash, Xianyu said in disdain. Seeing that the two of them were still closing in, Xianyu had no intention of stopping. Muronyu shook his head. He turned to Fantong and said, "Take out your shield." Fantong was suspicious. He did not know what Muronyu was up to. However, he still took out his shield. After all, he did not take Xianyu and the rest seriously. Muronyu smiled and said, "Enjoy your last days." As he spoke, he went in a Fantong's shield. At this moment, Xianyu felt uneasy. However, before she could react, a huge object with a terrifying aura descended from the sky. Bang! 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 Immediately, the youths beside Xianyu, the cultivators who had not reached the Heavenly King stage, all exploded at the same time. This included the two heavenly monarchs who were closing in on Muronyu and Xianyu. They were also turned into blood mist by the terrifying aura. Only the two heavenly king realm cultivators were not killed. However, they spat out blood from the terrifying aura. It was obvious that they were injured. However, Xianyu also had a trump card. The moment the terrifying pressure appeared, a dazzling light burst out from her body. A shield appeared on the surface of her body, firmly protecting her and resisting the terrifying pressure from the outside. Bang! At this moment, the huge object finally fell to the ground. Its huge body smashed a huge crater in the ground, causing the surrounding ground to crack. It was as if there was a huge earthquake. Dragon Beast! Other than Muronyu, the rest of the people could not help but exclaim. However, Fantong was shocked. Xianyu and the rest were terrified. "Miss, let's go." The two Heavenly King Realm cultivators from Xianxing City rushed up and grabbed Xianyu. Their bodies rose into the air and flew into the distance. "I, Xianyu, will remember the two of you. One day, I will personally kill all of you." An incomparably resentful voice sounded, but the person had already disappeared. Muronyu shook his head and sighed. The dragon beast is still a corpse. Otherwise, we could have killed them all. Chapter 865. You were the one who kept the dragon beast's corpse? When the dragon beast's corpse fell from the sky, Fantong was shocked. Then, only after Mystic Moon left with harsh words did Fantong react. He looked at Muronyu in surprise. He was really surprised. One had to know that the dragon beast's body was so big, even his storage ring couldn't fit it. Moreover, Muronyu couldn't store this dragon beast's corpse previously. But why was Muronyu able to store this dragon beast's corpse all of a sudden? Could it be that some innate magical ability had awakened after he broke through? The kind that carried a huge space with him? But weren't innate magical abilities only possessed by divine beasts or demons? How could humans have them? Fantong looked at Muronyu in confusion, only to discover that Murongyu's eyes started to flash with a dangerous glint. "Fantong, what did you say before?" Fantong was stunned. "I didn't say anything." "Oh, right, who am I? You were the one who kept this dragon beast's corpse?" "You don't have to answer, because I've already confirmed that you were the one who took away the dragon beast's corpse." Hearing this, the dangerous glint in Murongyu's eyes didn't weaken. Instead, it became even brighter. "I'm talking about what you said before Mystic Moon and the others appeared." Fantong was stunned at that moment. He pretended to be stupid and said, "Did I say anything? I didn't, right? I don't remember what I said. Do you remember what I said?" Muronyu was speechless. This Fantong was really realistic when he pretended to be stupid. Of course, he didn't really want to argue with Fantong. Therefore, with a wave of his hand, he summoned the Hichu Luoshu and kept the dragon beast's corpse. Now, not only could the dragon beast's corpse be used as food, it had also become Su Hao's bodyguard. Once he encountered experts below the Heavenly King realm, as long as he released the Dragon Beast's corpse, you could kill the other party without even needing to do anything. They were more reliable and powerful than divine artifacts. What level is this divine artifact? Even the corpse of a dragon beast could be stored inside. Brother, don't ever expose yourself in front of others again. Otherwise, you'll be in big trouble. Looking at Hichu Luoshu, Fan Tong didn't have any greed in his eyes. Instead, he warned Murongyu. In fact, it wasn't as if there weren't people in the god realm who had extremely large storage spaces. However, those divine artifacts were in the hands of those experts. At the very least, he had the ability to self-destruct. For example, with Murongyu's current strength as a true god, once Hichu Luoshu was exposed, he would not be able to protect himself. Murongyu shook his head and smiled bitterly in his heart. Hichu Luoshu had already been exposed. At the very least, the Immortal Palace and the Divine Union knew about it. It was just that none of them had been exposed. However, if Murongyu was discovered by them, they would definitely attack Murongyu. Furthermore, if Fan Tong knew about the situation inside Hichu Luoshu, he would definitely be tempted. The entire deity realm would probably make a move against Murongyu. Of course I know. Where are we going now? Murongyu asked. Why don't we go to Xianxing City? Motherf asterisk her. Whenever I think of that be asterisk tch, I'm pissed. She actually wanted to capture me and sully my pure body. I really want to slap her to death. Fan Tong said angrily. It was obvious that he hated Xianyu. However, his words caused Murongyu's face to darken. Pure and clean? Sully? Murongyu looked at Fan Tong suspiciously. I only see a withered willow body. Fan Tong's face darkened. I'm still a virgin. Murongyu nodded and said, no wonder. Actually, Xianyu is quite pretty. She can take your virginity. Fan Tong's face darkened even more. I plan to make a trip back to Heavenly Dao Sect. Where are you going? Murongyu actually wanted to go stone gambling to play, because he could see the things inside the divine stones. He would definitely make a huge profit if he went stone gambling. However, they couldn't go to Mysterious Star City now. Otherwise, they would be walking right into a trap. If he really forced Fan Tong into a corner, this fellow would invite out his father's phantom. With a slap, the entire Mysterious Star City would probably be razed to the ground. Moreover, Su Hao had left Heavenly Dao Sect for a long time. He needed to go back and take a look. Although the Heavenly Dao Sect had no effect on his cultivation, but there was still Yang Yun in the Heavenly Dao Sect. This woman had followed him in the primordial wasteland continent. He couldn't ignore her, and that Lingling, the ball of power sealed in her body, was very dangerous. Murongyu had promised to expel it for her, so he naturally wanted to go back and take a look. Moreover, the most important thing was that he felt that the ball of power sealed in Lingling's body should be a fortuitous opportunity for him. If he could refine that ball of power, his strength would definitely skyrocket. Anyway, I have nowhere to go. I'll go with you to Heavenly Dao Sect to take a look. Thus, the two of them flew and used teleportation arrays. After a few years, they finally returned to Heavenly Dao Sect. Of course, Murongyu didn't forget to leave behind a teleportation jade slip along the way. From then on, he would be able to teleport over in an instant with just a thought from Hichu Luoshu. In Heavenly Dao Sect, Yang Yun walked on the road with a lonely expression. She was dispirited and her eyes were dim. Originally, she thought that after joining Heavenly Dao Sect, even if she was only an outer sect disciple, with her hard work and aptitude, as well as the Heavenly Dao Sect's resources, it would be time for her to soar into the sky. However, in the past few decades, she had been very down and out. Originally, in the sect, the benefits of outer sect disciples were 10 low-grade divine crystals and 1 divine essence pill per month. However, since Yang Yun joined Heavenly Dao Sect, she could only get 1 low-grade divine crystal per month. As for the divine essence pill, she had never seen it before. In the beginning, Yang Yun was very angry, and she didn't know the reason. She had resisted, but she was just an outer sect disciple. How powerful could she be? She couldn't make any waves at all. In the end, she found out that it was all because of Murong Yu. Murong Yu had offended the Heavenly Alliance. However, in the end, he left Heavenly Dao's sect, and no one knew where he was. The people of Heavenly Alliance couldn't find Murong Yu, so they could only make trouble for Yang Yun. In fact, in the beginning, the people of Heavenly Alliance had invited Yang Yun to join Heavenly Alliance. However, they were rejected by Yang Yun. From then on, the people of Heavenly Alliance kept making trouble for her. Even the people of Skywave Prefecture in Heavenly Dao sect drew a clear line with her. This made Yang Yun disheartened for a while. She once wanted to leave Heavenly Dao sect. However, when she couldn't hold on any longer, Murong Yu's figure would appear in her mind. Even though the people of Heavenly Alliance made things difficult for her, she always believed in her feelings. She always believed that Murong Yu would soar to the sky. TSK. Isn't this junior sister Yang Yun? I heard that you got another lower grade divine crystal this month. A group of people blocked Yang Yun's way. A young man even looked at Yang Yun and sneered. Yang Yun glanced at these people indifferently. A touch of hatred flashed in her eyes. Get out of my way. You want to go through here? Okay, leave a lower grade divine crystal as the toll. The young man kept looking at Yang Yun's beautiful figure with lustful eyes and said with a cold smile, "Don't even think about it." The hatred in Yang Yun's eyes became more intense. She turned around and was about to bypass them. However, in a flash, these people blocked Yang Yun's path again. Hand over your divine crystal. Otherwise, you don't have to go through here today. TSK. Junior sister Yang Yun has a good figure. It should be fun to play with. How about this? It's fine if you don't want to hand over your divine crystal. As long as you follow me, I'll give you 2 lower grade divine crystals. What do you think? As he spoke, he had already walked towards Yang Yun. Halfway through, he had already stretched out his hand and grabbed Yang Yun's towering chest. Slap! Yang Yun was enraged. He slapped the man's face fiercely. The huge force sent the man flying. With her late true god cultivation, it was easy for her to slap the man who was only an early true god. Bitch, how dare you hit me? Damn it, if I don't CK you to death today, I swear I'm not a human. Because Yang Yun didn't go all out, she only sent the man flying. It didn't cause any fatal injuries to him. Brothers, take down this bitch. Today it's her turn. Then sell her to the brothel. The man rushed forward and threw a punch at Yang Yun. Seeing this person attack, the other men also attacked Yang Yun with lewd smiles. Yang Yun's strength wasn't bad. However, there were some people who were not inferior to her. There was even a true god expert, who was the young man who spoke at the beginning. Suppress. The young man sneered and sent out a palm to suppress Yang Yun. With a bang sound, Yang Yun was directly sent flying. Not everyone was like Murong Yu, who could kill enemies of a higher realm. Although Yang Yun's strength wasn't bad, the gap between her and a true god was too big. She was injured by the other party in a single move. You guys have fun. Remember, you can have fun, but don't kill her. The young man retracted his hand and said indifferently. Hearing that, the others were overjoyed and pounced on Yang Yun. At this moment, Yang Yun's strength was suppressed. She wanted to escape, but there was nowhere to run. She didn't have the ability to escape. Even if I die, I won't let these people defile my body. Yang Yun was in despair. She was about to self-destruct. However, at this moment, the man's figure appeared in her mind again. It was Murong Yu's figure. Suddenly, Yang Yun shook his head as a look of disbelief flashed across his face. She really saw Murong Yu's figure. Is this an illusion? Yang Yun shook her head, trying to wake herself up. However, Murong Yu's figure was getting closer and closer. Soon, he was in front of her. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.